All right, thank you. Okay, members, well, welcome you to the meeting of the Regeneration Community Committee on the 14th of March in the Town Hall in Enniskillen, and those joining on WebEx, you're very welcome. We've quite an agenda tonight, members, so I'll be looking your cooperation just to get through it all tonight, all been well. So just keep your comments brief if you can and bear that in mind as we go through. Item 1 is apologies, so we'll just go around the chamber. Councillor Maguire.
Agur Magad Carly, Neil Glasgow Wine Group of Hidden Fianna Knocked, Collier, Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. Anne-Marie Fitzgerald is absent and Anne-Marie Donnelly will be joining us slightly late. Chair,
Thank you. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies that I'm aware of. Councillor Crawford is running late, and just at this juncture, if I can say that Councillor Irvine is unable to attend the Veterans event on Wednesday, and if possible, we would like to substitute Councillor Crawford to go to that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Is Councillor Garrity on the meeting?
Indeed, Chair. Thank you. No apologies from our group tonight. Thanks very much.
Okay, and Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies, but Councillor Elliott a bit late.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any other apologies, members? Okay, do we need a proposal for Victor's clarification on that change? No, that's okay. Okay, thank you, members. Item 2 is to sign the minutes and confidential minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of February 2023. They've been signed, members. 3, and just before we go to 3, Councillor McElduff, a very quick item, please.
I asked you there, Chair, on a procedural point to come in early in the meeting on a matter relating to the A5, and you'll see why. On Wednesday, the 29th of March at 5:30, we have scheduled an informal meeting with the A5 Enough is Enough group. And because we styled that as an online meeting, as an informal meeting, they tend to take place online. But the organisers of that campaign have asked me specifically this day if we could change the status of that meeting from an informal meeting to a formal meeting so that we can have that meeting in person. I know they've met with Mid-Ulster Council this way. They've met with Derry Strabane Council this way. They've met with DFI. They're going to meet DFI Permanent Secretary, etc., etc. So to reflect the status of the A5 issue, if we could just change the status of that meeting from informal to formal, hopefully hold that date, Wednesday the 29th at 5:30 p.m. So I would propose that accordingly, Chair, if that's in order.
That's proposed. Have we a seconder just for procedure? Councillor Rainey. Can we have a look at that, John?
Chair, yeah, just let's go look at it to see if it's allowed within our standing orders or whatever, and then we can certainly come back.
Confirm with the councillors.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Thank
All
you,
right.
Chair.
Okay, members. Item 3 now, declarations of interest. Any tonight? Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. 6-3, member of the Geopark Committee. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Robertson.
5-3 from our Lakeland Tourism.
Okay, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Item 7.3, Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board as a member. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor McLaughlin.
It's 5.2 as a member of the management of Enniskillen Rugby Club.
Okay, John. WebEx, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair, and all the best for this evening. Declarations of interest, 5.2 as a member of the Grant Aid Panel, 6.2 Event Strategy Working Group, 6.4 the Management Committee of OMA and Independent Advice Services, 7.2 as a member of the Planning Committee regarding the PAN, and 7.3 as a current chair of the Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board of Fermanagh and OMA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. 5.3 FLT and 6.2 Event Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a number of ones here. 5.1 as an employee of Southwest College, 5.2 as a member of the Grant Aid Appeals Panel, 5.3 as a board member of Fermanagh Lakeland Tourism, and 5.5 also as an employee of Southwest College. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. For me, it's just 5.2 as a member of the Grant Aid Panel. I think that'll do me. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Deehan.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. Item 7.2, the proposal of application notice as a member of the Planning Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McPhillips.
Thanks, Chair. Item 5.3 as a member of FLT and item 6.2 as a member of Event Strategy Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Yes, Chair. 6.2 as a member of the Event Strategy Working Group.
Okay, and Councillor John Coyle.
5.2, Chair, as a member of the Grant Appeals Panel. Thank you.
Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. 5.2, I'm a committee member of Carrickmores and Columkills Gaelic Football Club. 7.2, planning, and I picked up on Councillor Thompson referring to OMA Independent Advice Services, so I'll do the same there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rainey.
6.2, Event Strategy Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Baird.
Yes, like my colleague, Event Strategy Working Group, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robert Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. 7.2, member of the Planning Committee.
And Councillor Robinson.
7.2, Planning Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Barton.
7.3, Community Plan.
Okay. There we go. I think that's it, members. Maybe Councillor McCann, just check your hand there, please. Is there any more? We can pick them up. Matters arising now, members. This is from the minutes of the 14th of February. We'll go through them. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, 11, and on 12, on page 12, we're going to pick up item 4.1, correspondence. John, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, correspondence from the Western Health and Social Care Trust in relation to the provision of social workers, where they point out there's been no reduction in funded posts or any reduction in social work posts within the Western Trust, but they do highlight that there are a number of vacancies, especially in the family and childcare teams in Enniskillen, and they have highlighted a number of remedies which they are progressing in order to fill those vacancies. And in terms of finances, they've indicated that they don't have a reduced number of posts in social work and therefore have not reduced the financial budgets. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll propose that for noting, but just with a comment that they're saying there's no reduction, but yet when you try to contact them to get in touch with a social worker, it is very, very difficult to do that. And I know certainly our constituents out there have the same problem. So just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll second the noting of this correspondence, Chair. And I think whilst I welcome the information from Mr. Guckian, Chief Executive of the Western Health and Social Care Trust, nevertheless, it is of concern that there are ongoing difficulties in filling the vacancies for social workers, particularly in family and childcare. Chair, you will be aware that this is a very important area which relates to the safety and well-being of children and young people. And this difficulty in filling those vacancies has been ongoing for quite some time. Mr. Guckian references in his correspondence initiatives that the Trust has put in place to address the situation. And I certainly welcome that. And I think that these measures should be, go some way in addressing the shortfall in staffing. but just to note that it does place our social work staff, particularly in this department, under very severe stress. And certainly it's something that I think that we should keep a watching brief on and ensure that those initiatives introduced by the Trust are actually paying dividends in terms of fulfilling those vacancies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As proposed and seconded, members. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment really at the top of page 2. Mr. Gukian says that they include offering newly qualified social workers a permanent contract without interview. And I think an interview is a very good opportunity for applicants to understand the nature of the role and to understand the environment they're working in. So I just wonder what the rationale is for offering those positions without interview. Could I propose we seek more clarity on that, please, Chair?
On that issue, okay, that's proposal. Is
Thank
there
you.
a seconder for that, just? Councillor McLaughlin, okay, and all agreed. Thank you. Okay, members, that's passed. And then that was page 12 and page 13, it's the final page. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5, Regeneration and Planning Directorate Reports 5.1, is to consider report on Enniskillen Workhouse, paper A. That's over to Kim. Thank you.
Okay, so paper A, members, has been circulated and it updates members on a number of issues relating to the workhouse in Enniskillen and seeks approval for new branding, an increase in the financial commitment to the management and maintenance costs for the workhouse, and notes the establishment of the Enniskillen Workhouse Steering Group. Members will know that the Council, in partnership with South West College, has recently restored the workhouse in Enniskillen, and the facility is now operational as a business incubation and a heritage centre. Ground floor has been redeveloped as mixed-use exhibition, reminiscence and display space, which tells the story of the workhouse, and that will be open weekdays for self-guided tours, and guided tours will also be available, and that will be managed by Museum Services. And alongside that, the remaining ground floor space and first floor space will be used as a business incubation hub, supporting new entrepreneurs. So the Council and South West College have undertaken preparatory works to create an identity to facilitate the promotion of the workhouse, and that information is attached to this paper at Appendix 1. The colour palette of that branding is muted, and the font style is simple, reflecting the heritage of the building and the restoration that has taken forward. In addition, in terms of management and maintenance costs, South West College has recently undertaken a detailed review of expected costs and have identified a 100% increase in energy costs and a 42% increase in maintenance and cleaning costs. So we are seeking approval for a revised figure of £50,000 per year over a 10-year period towards the management and maintenance. We do anticipate that all of that will not be required and that we'll be able to offset some of that cost from rental of the space to entrepreneurs, and also rental for meetings and hire of some of the space within the building. And we have set aside that funding in this year's estimates, so that amount is provided for. Furthermore, an Enniskillen Workhouse Steering Group is going to be established to develop and deliver targeted interventions, and that is to make sure that we deliver on the development plan which will be identified for the building. So it's recommended that Council approves the new brand identity for the workhouse as set out in Appendix 1, approves increased financial assistance for the long-term running costs for up to 10 years, up to a maximum value of £50,000 per annum, based on the condition that South West College provides the same allocation, and that we note the establishment of the Enniskillen Workhouse Steering Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kim, for that report. Councillor Swift.
Margaret Caherlock, and thank you, Kim, for the report. Kim, can I just ask on point number 2 of the recommendation, where we say based on the condition that SWC is going to provide the same level of commitment, do we have any indicators at this stage that we are assured that, yeah, we have, right? Yes, so that's a nod, that's right.
Yes,
that's
we do.
good.
We do have a commitment.
Okay, right. Thank you for that, Kim. So, Caherlock, I'm certainly satisfied that we can proceed to recommend and approve everything that's outlined at point number 8. And I just want to thank the team for providing us with the opportunity recently to have a tour of the workhouse. Without a doubt, the workhouse is a very stark and exhibits a very painful history of which a lot of us already know about. It was most definitely a harsh and very disciplined life for all those inside, and a very sad reality, a very sad story of which we can all reflect on today now that the building is in existence for the tours that you've already outlined. So I would encourage everybody to have a tour. And I just want to commend Anne Quinn and the team for getting it to this, where we are today with it, Kim. So pass on our thanks to that. A lot of the work, as we know, is unseen. And I want to especially thank Catherine Scott, who provided the tour that day and who will provide the tour to anybody else. She, without a doubt, provides a very suspenseful story of the workhouse. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you for that proposal. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to second that. I'd like to concur with the points that Councillor Swift has made so well there. It is a magnificent achievement, the work that has been going on to restore this building. While there is a past that is sorrowful, of course, I think it's good that we're moving forward, that there is an opportunity for entrepreneurs here. Fully support the work being done to create a future of prosperity and economic development for the district, whilst also acknowledging the past use of the building. I have a question at 2.2.1, please, Kim. The significant increase of all costs, including the 100% increase in energy, with the ability of Southwest College or with its awards in renewable and sustainable energy, was the intention that the college would be self-sustaining in energy at some point? And if so, could that same apply to the energy costs of the workhouse?
I suppose in terms of the workhouse, we started with an older building, and the capital works did not include developing the building to that type of specification, as would have been the case for the new build in the college. But certainly it's something we can, in terms of ongoing energy efficiency measures, we can try and keep under review.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. That's proposed and seconded. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, I really just wanted to come in and support this recommendation and to acknowledge the wonderful tour that we had of Enniskillen Workhouse last month, and to offer my thanks and congratulations to Anne Quinn and her team for the superb work that has been accomplished in delivering this project. I think it's absolutely amazing that we, in conjunction with the Southwest College, that we were able to deliver this project. As other members have acknowledged, Chair, we remember with great sadness and acknowledge the suffering of the people who used the facilities of Enniskillen Workhouse in the past. But I think it is appropriate that this building now will serve to provide for the future needs of our community by providing opportunities for business incubation, innovation and sustainability. And going forward, that initiative will support our community into the future. I think it is appropriate that this council should provide financial support, and on the face of it, £50,000 per annum is not a lot when you consider what is going to be delivered in that facility, and I'm confident that it will be very successful in delivering it. I said at that tour of the workhouse that I would like to see this type of project replicated in the future in other areas of our district council, and particularly in Omagh, where many of us will have in mind sites where we could use this model to great benefit. So happy to support, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Armstrong.
Chair, just a supplementary, if you'd allow me, please, and thank you. It's just a question again for Kim regarding funding. one of the themes within supporting the shared prosperity, is it shared prosperity fund, is people and skills. Would there be an opportunity to apply for funding for the running of the Workhouse Incubation Centre through that mechanism?
We currently have an application in under UK SPF People and Skills in collaboration with the other 10 councils for an entrepreneurship support service. So we will have an opportunity to look at how we roll out that entrepreneurship programme and whether we can tailor it to provide some local schemes which can support the workhouse. So I think there is some scope within the current application.
Thank you. Okay, all agreed, members. Thank you. Move on to item 5.2, is to consider report on grant aid recommendations, strategic capital projects, grant programme, paper B. Kim will just take us to the recommendations, please, Kim.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper has been circulated. Members will recall that funding was identified by Council to take forward a strategic capital grants programme. The application process was opened and we received a total of 38 applications. An assessment process was undertaken and the recommendations of officers were presented to the grant aid panel. The Appendix 1 sets out the notes of the grant aid panel meeting on the 15th of February and the reports which were presented to that committee. Further to assessment, the projects outlined at paragraph 2.4 have been recommended for approval, and that is on top of the 2 applications already funded in Brookborough and Ernest and Greencastle and Mid Tyrone. And so it is recommended that the committee approves the recommendations of the Grant Aid E-panel meeting held on 15th of February, that the budget is allocated in line with the recommendations as outlined in Table 1, that correspondence is issued to the unsuccessful scored applicants, including advice on the appeals process, and that on completion of the appeals process, successful groups are issued a first stage letter of offer for technical assistance. And furthermore, that we note the awards approved by the relevant head of service for awards of up to £500. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kim, for that. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to commend this whole report. I'm delighted to see the projects that has been developed right across our district. I am obviously disappointed that so many has missed out and missed out narrowly on it. And I think it does highlight the actual need that there is and the amount of benefit to communities and to the local economy that this brings, because all of these clubs and community organisations that wouldn't be able to start their projects only for this grant aid are then, because of this grant aid, are spending sometimes double, treble, 4 times as much money then by the very fact that they have got this leg up from the council. And I think the local economy and local communities are benefiting tenfold from this grant aid. So I'm delighted at that there, and I think that it's something that I know it's said that is a one-off. I think, and I would propose that the council do look at any possibility that this could be an annual or biannual fund for not just local communities and local clubs, but it's the local economy in Fermanagh and Omagh that will benefit by far greater numbers than the grant that's been put out. So I would propose that we just don't write this off as a one-off, and that we look into the possibilities of having it an annual or biannual grants programme.
Thank you. You happy to propose that report as well, Seamus? Okay, thank you. Councillor Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kim, for that also. Yeah, I'd be happy to second the two proposals that Seamus, the one that Seamus made and the original one as well, but just wanted to ask a question and just, and well done to the clubs that did get funding. It's great to see it, but as Seamus says, a lot there didn't get funding. And I see some of them was eligible for the CSP, the capital grants funding, and not for one and one for the other. I was just wondering, what was the much difference in the two of them? Or what was the, was it much between them, like? And when the letters is going out telling them, Kim will explain to them about this, how to apply for the other fund as well.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose the criteria that was identified said that priority would be applied to those groups who were ineligible or excluded from previous grant schemes, and they referenced the CRSSP as where groups were eligible to apply for that previously. There's no confirmation that that fund will run again. We would hope that there may be a further round of it, or if not the CRSSP, that there would be a further village renewal potential round, or a successor village renewal, which would come from DAERA. And those clubs or groups or schemes which are within villages are more likely to be able to benefit from those schemes should they come around in future. So that's really what that reference is referring to. In terms of, I suppose in terms, when we identified this fund, we did agree at that point in time that it would be a one-off project. At this point in time, no further funding has been identified, and that would be something that members would have to consider in the context of future estimates processes, or as we relook at our capital programme. And we've currently just agreed a 5-year capital plan. So as we revisit that as part of the estimates process, that would be the time that members would have an opportunity to identify if further funding was to be made available.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Irvine.
Yes, I welcome the allocation of the strategic fund. I think Kim has summed up rightly. It was allocated on the basis of availability of cash for capital funds. Whilst we would like to do it, I think the predicament that we as a council are in needs careful scrutiny, and we've already agreed a forward capital plan, but we can't put it on a wish list, so to speak. But again, it's going to be, I think, in the need for available capital. So I welcome what we have given already, but we'll just have to look at it with a different magnifying glass the next time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor Swift.
Thank you, Kim, again, and well done to the successful applicants. And of course, I send my commiserations and share the angst of those who were unsuccessful on this occasion. And I have been reading all of the minutes, and look, while it's clear and I understand, and I thank Kim for advising on some of the technical assistance aspects of it, and the offer for the groups who have been unsuccessful on this occasion, they will be provided with full feedback to enable them to be successful in the future, which will be good. And I think that's a good idea as well, to discuss that the next time in advance of our estimates as well, because community and voluntary groups and all these clubs that have applied cannot rely on donations, and they cannot keep going out fundraising all the time. This is a great way to be able to aid their great vision and ideas to help their own communities.
Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome this funding and commitment to the clubs, because it's important to highlight the role that these clubs play within their communities. They're very much at the heart of the communities. And I just think it's quite unfortunate then there was a number of clubs that, like my own local club, Enniskillen and Gales, that scored over 65%, but was unlucky to miss out. And looking to know from Kim that there will be, the council will work with those clubs to ensure that they're successful in the next. Hopefully that there'll be another opportunity to apply for a fund, and that the council will work with these clubs to make sure that they're successful the next time. And then the other query would be around Was there site visits carried out? I think it's important that when this funding is being allocated, that all due diligence is carried out, and we do look at site visits to see what plans are happening, what development has already taken place, and those kind of things. Because as I said, these clubs are the heartbeat of the community, and they provide such a great service to everybody. And it's just when some miss out that it would be good to know that the process and the system is completely fair and open and transparent. That's all, Chair.
Okay. We'll bring in Councillor Gannon at this point in WebEx as well, and then come back. Kim. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair, and firstly, thanks to Kim and John for taking me calls on this particular issue and helping with a few questions that I had. And obviously, I welcome the funding going out. They're all brilliant projects, without a doubt, as everyone else has said. I do share some of the same sentiment as Councillor Green, that we should look to try and do something again. Maybe, obviously, we haven't put it in the estimates for future, but that we consider it, that the options put on the table for us, and that we can make the decision at the time. But I think what I wanted to, and I was chatting to Kim about this, was the priority being applied to those previously ineligible and excluded. Now, I think it's what I would just like to, quick question, and I should have asked Kim, this was on the phone, I didn't think of it. But how was priority scored, if it was scored, or was it just a case of if a group had received funding in the past 3 years, which is what it states in the guidance note, it kind of automatically ruled them out if there was another eligible project that had scored over 65% that had not received the funding in the 3 years? Because it does say, I do think the document is misleading. The table 1 and appendix 1 is misleading, because it seems to suggest that they're eligible for other funding, but there is, as has been said, no other funding at this moment. So just to clarify, that there is no other funding available at this moment in time that we know of. We're hopeful that it'll come, and very positive and hopeful that it will come, and that if it doesn't come, we'll try to get something going. But just to clarify, that the likes of, I'm just looking at the top two, Ederney and Devonish, have missed out because they received funding in the previous 3 years, whereas Connolly and Co, for example, just again, top of the document, received it because they hadn't, and they got priority over them. And I think it would be, and I think it's wrong to say they're eligible under other funding, because they're not, because we don't know the requirements of other funding there, if you know what I'm getting at. So just that question around how priority was scored, or was it a case of there was no scoring to it? It was just given that if you had received in the past 3 years and there was a application that had scored over 65 below you, even if you had got 100%, you would miss out on this occasion because of that. But not to knock Connolly and Co, they're fantastic projects there as well, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kim, respond to them too, please.
Okay, so in terms of working with clubs to help them, certainly we will follow up with clubs and advise them of the outcome of the process. There will be no difficulty in working with clubs to clarify where their application fell down, and to support them to understand how they could do better in terms of future applications. And indeed, community support officers are available and willing to work with clubs and other applicants. In terms of site visits, they're not carried out at this stage of the process. We score the applications on the basis of the information provided on the application form, and that is a process which is fair to everyone, in that we take the information provided and assess on the basis of that. We don't seek any further information at this point in time, but there's now a 2-stage process, and the first stage is technical assistance, where we will now carry out pre-letter of offer site visits with the successful groups, and that will help in ensuring that an application can proceed to the second stage of the application process. In terms of Councillor Gannon's query, the applications were scored on the basis of the criteria and the guidance notes, and just to confirm that was shared with members and agreed through a previous committee meeting. So members have formally approved that. So there there were 5 criteria against which applications were scored. They were put in rank order, and then at that stage we considered previous or current funding and their eligibility to have applied for other funds that were available. So that's the basis on which we conducted the rank order and considered whether applications could have been made to other funds which were available at a point in time as well. And that's really to ensure that, I suppose, we maximise the opportunity from this fund to benefit development which could not be funded elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Councillor Green, very quick, please. Now you've already been in, so would I just, sorry, get you on?
Thank you, Chair. It was just one of the things I wanted to say when Robert was talking over there. The sound is really bad tonight. I couldn't hear him. It was all the better. But anyway, it's just the sound is terrible. And the other thing is just on the village renewal, if it comes in again, one of the major problems in it excludes anything outside the 30-mile-an-hour limit. So, you know, where a lot of activity for community-based groups take place. So that's the problem with that funding scheme.
Okay, good. That needs to be okay. Thank you. And Councillor McCaffrey on WebEx.
Garmagad Carley, thank you, Chair. Well, just like the other councillors have said, I'm obviously disappointed for those clubs and groups that didn't receive funding, because there's so many great projects there that were applied for, and hopefully their time will come again. But just, I suppose, just to say that I am, of course, delighted that Connolly received the funding. I do know firsthand of the work that the club has put in with that particular project, and I am really over the moon to see it get past the line. So just to, I suppose, praise that club, and I can't wait to see the community development take place. So I'm happy with that, Garmagad.
All right, thank you. We'll note that for you. Okay, members, that's all agreed and passed. We'll move on to item 5.3, is to consider report on Fermanagh Lakeland Tourism, paper C.
Chair, so this report follows on from the Council's approval of the Visitor Experience Development Plan and the delivery arrangements for that. And the purpose of the report is to seek approval of a marketing and promotion plan for the Fermanagh Noma District as a tourism destination in the 23-24 year. Council has agreed to enter into a service level agreement with FLT for tourism marketing and promotion in the year ahead. There is consensus that year will be a transition year. We're establishing the Visitor Experience Development Plan Delivery Partnership, and we'll be working towards agreeing and activating the action plan for that. An FODC and FLT officer forum has been established, and that is working well to input to the development of marketing and promotion plans, ensuring that there's a more coordinated approach between our own internal council marketing plans around our own facilities, in conjunction with the wider marketing and promotion activity for the district as a whole. So a one-year marketing plan is attached for consideration and approval at Appendix 1, and we will be working with FLT to develop a 3-year marketing and promotion plan for the period 24 to 27. And just to note that through the estimates process, a budget of £105,840 was agreed for marketing and promotion during the 23-24 year, and that represented a 10% reduction on the previous year's budget, reflecting the financial challenges which the council is experiencing and continues to experience. So it is recommended that council approves a total contribution of £105,840 for the 23-24 financial year, linked to a service level agreement with FLT for marketing and promotion of the Fermanagh Noma District.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Director McLaughlin for her report. This is a very important report, and I suppose sometimes Fermanagh gets the good coverage and has been for years and years, but we must never forget the Oma part of the district as well. So I'm going to go to the recommendation, and I'm going to formally propose the recommendation as listed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And Councillor Swift.
Guramagat Cahirlock, I'll second the proposal, and sure, why wouldn't Fermanagh be getting all the attention? Sure, we
Get a
are.
Fermanagh seconder.
But anyway, thank you, Kim. And it came up at our Quilca Lakelands meeting on Tuesday as well about the partnership and the collaborative working on all the exciting things, and it's well listed in the outline plan. So I'm sure everybody's going to look forward to all the fantastic attractions and the exciting visitor experience. Guramagat.
Thank you. All agreed there, members. That's passed. And item 5.4 is to consider reporting the meeting of the Agricultural Liaison Group on the 9th of March. We just go to the recommendations there, members. If we get someone from the group to propose that for us. Councillor Feely and a seconder. Councillor Barton. Thank you, members. And item 5.5 is to consider report of the Director of Regeneration and Planning, paper E.
Thank you, Chair. So a number of items within this. First of all, approval to accept letters of offer and letter of variation. So at 2.1, you can see that there's a couple of letters of offer and a letter of variation listed. The second part is endorsement of a shared island proposal. And this is in relation to a project between Ulster Wildlife and Leitrim Sustainable Farming Group with Leitrim County Council, a £50,000 bid to Shared Island, which has been successful for a training and leadership programme for a small group of cross-border or inter-county farmers. And that includes a number of farmers in the Fermanagh area. And they are seeking Council's endorsement to use the Council's logo along with their bid and their project. Third part of the report at 2.3 provides some information around the loss of EU funding and Replacement UK funds. So largely for information and setting out the funds that are closing, as well as the potential new funds and some local impacts in terms of the Council being in the final stages of delivering the Aspire programme and the application which we have submitted along with South West College, and we hope to have an outcome to that shortly, as well as the application for the Successor Entrepreneurship programme. At 2.4, we have set out really a proposed approach for progressing business cases in the absence of council and committee meetings, so seeking approval for the Chief Executive during the pre-election and election period when council is not meeting to authorise those business cases or economic appraisals which are assessed and recommended for approval, with a report on approvals presented to the June meeting of the Regeneration and Community Committee for noting, and that's just to ensure that there are no delays with projects. And finally, an update in relation to a query regarding access to business loans, so just some information. So a number of recommendations that we note the acceptance of letters of offer and letters of variation. We endorse the Shared Island project with Ulster Wildlife and Leitrim Sustainable Farming Group. Note the update on EU funding withdrawal and UK replacement funds. Grant delegated authority to the Chief Executive to authorise business cases and appraisals during the election or pre-election period, with a report brought for information to the June Regeneration and Community Committee for noting, and that we note the update in relation to provision of start-up business loans from Fermanagh Enterprise Agency and Oma Enterprise Company.
Thank you for that. Kim, Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kim. And I'm happy to propose the recommendation, Chair.
You, Alan, and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very happy to second that. And in particular, the letter of offer for the enhancement works at Lochnavar Forest. I think this fits very, very well with our tourism package. So happy to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yeah, and thanks, Chair. I was going to second it too, and was going to mention that letter offer for Lochnavar Forest as well. It's great to see that, so just happy to support. Thank you.
Okay, members, all agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6 now, the Community and Wellbeing Directorate reports. 6.1 to consider report on affordable warmth scheme update, paper F, and that's over to John.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will be aware of the affordable warmth scheme and the importance of it in our district here. Some of the aims of it are highlighted there is to deliver a whole house approach to providing energy efficiency improvement measures to target and assist those most likely to be living with severe fuel poverty, and I suppose that's particularly important at this point in time. And also to deliver a range of measures within a short period of time with minimal disruption to residents. The Department for Communities is responsible for the scheme, and they work in partnership with ourselves in the local councils and the Northern Ireland Housing Executives in the administration of the scheme. And as for our council responsibilities, we're responsible really for doing all of the administration work, the targeting of those households, determining the eligibility for the scheme, and making referrals to the Housing Executive in order for the work to be undertaken. I suppose there is correspondence in Appendix 1 from DFC in relation to the funding that is available, or they don't really highlight the funding that is available for the 23-24 year. They have just said that that the council should continue to make 20 referrals per month to the Housing Executive just for the first quarter, because they're not sure of the budget that will be applied to the scheme itself. I suppose officers feel that they're very disappointing, given the fact that we are in a current cost of living crisis, that there is fuel poverty in our district, and it will impact on those who are the most vulnerable in our society in the district. And I suppose it leads to a great deal of uncertainty. We have persons employed within our council who deliver the scheme, and that uncertainty, without certainty of budget and long-term tenure for their employment in undertaking the work in relation to the scheme. Increasingly, what we are finding for the affordable warm scheme is that it is not the amount that we get for the number of referrals that we have do not cover the costs that we incur. When the scheme was set up in 2015, it was meant to be fully funded from DFC. And increasingly, that is not the case. It's estimated that we will fund the scheme in the 23-24 year somewhere in the region of £47,000 from our own resources here in the council. We are forced, because of the number of referrals are limited to 20, and it is very difficult to get 20 and it is only, and I should stress that those 20 are based on the number of successful referrals to NIHE. We may put referrals through and they are not accepted by the Housing Executive, and all of that work that has been undertaken in the assessment of those cases has been effectively nugatory work, because it is not, the scheme is not, or the project is not taken forward by the Housing Executive, and we don't get paid for that. So it is increasingly challenging to get 20 referrals per month. And as it says in the report there, approximately 1/3 of referrals fail to proceed or are cancelled by the Housing Executive for various reasons. And in order to get 20 or 30 referrals per month, we need a lot more than that in order to make sure that success is guaranteed. So there is uncertainty with regarding the funding of the affordable warm scheme as it presently stands, but there is also that uncertainty with regard to the level of funding which is applied to each referral which is successful. Furthermore, in 2018, there was a review carried out by Business Consultancy Services on behalf of DFC, and it was recommended that consideration be given to move the scheme into a single delivery agent. Now, what that means, it hasn't been taken forward yet, but again, further uncertainty as to the future of the scheme itself. Nevertheless, we have a letter of offer to approve the SLA, and the request is to approve the SLA in relation to the affordable warm scheme for the period April 22 to the 31st of March 24. And just to highlight the success of the scheme, and there are issues regarding funding or whatever, but it did result in 226 homes within our district in the 22-23 year receiving funding from the scheme. So it is a great measure, and it is a great measure, especially at this time of fuel poverty. Just in terms of the finances, again, the potential for revenue for the referrals is £57,000, but the cost of delivering it is somewhere in the region of £104,000, and that's where the £47,000 subvention from the council comes into play. Chair, it's recommended that the Council notes the update on the report on the Affordable Warm Scheme, approves the Affordable Warm Service Level Agreement for signing, and agrees that any deficit in funding from DFC to cover staff costs and indeed the whole administration of the scheme for 23-24 will be met through possible in-year efficiencies within the Council itself.
Thank you, John, for that. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Director for that report. This is a very important project, and the fact that 226 homes in our area have availed of it is a start. However, as a sad individual, I was just looking at some of the stats from the census, and Erin North has over 6,000 homes in it. So we multiply that out by 7 roughly, and I'm sure there's more in some of the other areas which are larger. That's over 42,000 homes. So this is just a tip on the iceberg. And we would have the vast majority of homes that require access to this warmer homes fund. Our housing stock is probably some of the worst in Northern Ireland. And this is definitely, we're getting a hard end of the stick as usual. But what we can do, we will continue to do. So I welcome the recommendations, and I'm going to propose we accept them. But I do have disappointment that we're not having it more focused for this particular council area.
Thank you for that. Councillor Barton.
Thank you. While indeed I second Councillor McLaughlin's proposal and agree with everything he has already stated. Can I just ask why are referrals not accepted by the NIHE? Why are so many turned down?
Thank you, Councillor.
Chair, there are a number of reasons, largely got to do with eligibility criteria and what we may assess as being appropriate eligibility criteria, the Housing Executive. And I suppose you have to take account of the fact that they have also reduced budgets at this time, that they are applying strict eligibility criteria in relation to what is an approved project and what is not.
So in other words, they're looking at they're not looking at the house or the home that the application has applies to, but they're looking at the person's financial position.
Certainly one of the criteria that is assessed is the financial position of the person, and that is one of the detailed criteria that is assessed by our officers in that regard, yes.
Yeah. No, it's very disappointing, the number that have been turned down, and as you say, there seems to be a discrepancy between what the council recommend as going forward, and then all of a sudden NIHE turn them down. So I'm just wondering, is there something that could be looked at that is more reassuring, that when something is passed forward to the Northern Ireland House Executive, that they will accept your word for it?
As suppose, Chair, we do work closely with the Housing Executive, and you can appreciate, the conversations that take place in regard to that. And there is a serious amount of time that is spent in relation to the administration from our officers on this scheme. And that interaction with the Housing Executive is very, very much live. But I suppose there is, I suppose the interpretation about what is acceptable as criteria is very difficult at this time. And I would imagine it is very much related to budgetary constraints.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Yep, it's very unfortunate. I think both my colleagues and anybody else has spoken on it realise the need for this and the constraints. I just wonder, John, you've highlighted the issue really is probably around the financial eligibility. Is there any way that we can actually reduce our time wastage by our officers by actually honing in on those criteria, which are the crucial points that the Housing Executive actually reject, and possibly concentrate on those as a starting point, first discussion, so that if they're going to fall at the start rather than after we've gone through, say, the whole form with them. And I'm not telling my granny how to suck eggs here, But if there's anything that we can do to speed up the process, and if there's people going to fail, they're going to fail. And if we know or have a good idea where they're going to fail, then we either don't submit or we go with partial information and ask, is this okay to actually proceed to a full investigation? Because I think what you're doing, and it is right, our officers are too diligent and they're being cut off at the knees by the housing executive, and we know why they're doing it. So if there's any way that we can actually short circuit, go to the crucial points, and if it fails at that, that's it. We just go somewhere else. Just answer the question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
I have to say it's difficult, because in order to get to that stage of deciding whether something is eligible or not, there is a lot of work that takes place in relation to assessment of benefits, of the need for the project. All of those sorts of things need to be assessed. And it is probably just at the latter end of submission to the housing executive that the project may or may not be in doubt. So a lot of work goes in on that eligibility, and there's very strict criteria and form filling and so on and so forth in order to get to that stage. The way the process works is, yes, there is an element of self-referral, but there is also an element of where it is referred by DFC and indeed postcodes as to where is the most need within our district, and a lot of time is also spent there in assessing where are the appropriate locations, not just individuals, because the referrals come from a number of different sources. So it's a very labour intensive process, is all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Swift.
Look, yeah, that's exhausting to hear it's such a labour-intensive process, and I hear you loudly and clearly on that, John. I find the correspondence totally distasteful, especially given that there's such a cost of living crisis, and we're talking about the most vulnerable in our super council area. It really just isn't good enough, and the fact that DFC can't even confirm the budget, and they've imposed this model on us, which nearly means there isn't a chance again for our rural dwellers. And I think it's commendable that we as a council are going to look at some in-year efficiencies to assist this unfortunate outcome and situation. And it just proves to me once again that it seems to be our local authority and our council is the only genuinely kind form of local government working for and on behalf of the vulnerable people. And we're trying our best in collaboration with HE. I think it wouldn't be such a bad idea to perhaps get back to DFC and suggest the need to relook at this model that they're imposing on us, because the very fact that we cannot meet the criteria that they are imposing, and that's quite a strengthy word, and it's used in our minutes. So I don't accept that it's good enough for the people. So may I suggest and propose, and if everybody else thinks, why not have a go and have a try at that, to seek that they change this model that they have imposed on us, so that we can definitely then have much better outcomes for our people, because it can't be over to the council all the time to find where the money, where they aren't providing it to us.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Director John Boyle for the report. I suppose I agree with all the speakers that have went before me and what they've said, and I'm happy to second Councillor Swift's proposal there that we go to DFC. I think it boils down to the usual word here, John, and that's criteria or criterion, and that's where the thing falls down all the time. I've dealt with a few of these cases over the years, and it's by no simple process at all. And I want to take my hat off and commend the council officers that have been involved for their diligence and all of their work with regard to this. But then when it goes to the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, a lot of it doesn't meet the criteria, and that's where it falls down. And particularly at this time, the cost of living and fuel poverty and everything else, I'm happy enough to second Councillor Swift's proposal, and I also agree with the recommendations as listed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to John and his team for a very comprehensive report. Chair, the Council has been put in a really invidious position. I mean, I support the recommendations 100%. It is absolutely essential that this Council does everything within its power to support low-income families who are in fuel poverty. And we have no doubt that the Affordable Warmth Scheme does mitigate the effects of fuel poverty in vulnerable households. So I think whilst it clearly is unacceptable that the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council have to provide an annual 47k subvention in reality to this scheme, I think it's another example of where local government have not been properly funded by central government. And of course, I support Councillor Swift's proposal that we should go back to the Permanent Secretary at DFC, asking them to look at this model again. I understand from the report, Chair, that a review of the model was carried out in 2018 and a single delivery agent was recommended. But since this was a considerable shift in policy, it required ministerial approval. Perhaps in the near future, we will see a minister in position and this may come to fruition. But I would also ask Councillor Swift if she would incorporate into her proposal that we should highlight to the Permanent Secretary the cost of this important scheme to the Council, and ask that funding for this scheme would be prioritised given the huge need that exists in our community in this regard, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure the proposer and seconder are happy with that. Okay. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay there?
Yep.
Yeah, no problem. I just, this is disappointing. And I think it does draw very significant questions over the commitment of Stormont really to address either the cost of living crisis and the heating or eating crisis, or even the environmental impact, because obviously improvements to people, improving people's warmth in their homes can reduce energy consumption. That's the whole point of how it reduces, it achieves, reduces heating poverty. And obviously, if they're serious about such forward-looking environmental sustainable pathway, then I think they should obviously fund this to a much greater extent. The eligibility, as far as I gather, is £23,000, which is not, it's not even the average income of an individual. So a working family would be ineligible for this, even though they may be suffering from quite severe heating poverty. And I think what we need to see is a large-scale retrospective investment an investment in retrospective refitting and retrofitting of housing across the board to address both fuel poverty and also the issue of environmental sustainability. And it would create a lot of jobs, but the sort of ambition and vision to bring that forward is sadly absent from the Stormont regime that we live under. So it's disappointing. We're ending up subsidizing even this tick box exercise in a sense that so few people benefit from it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just I suppose in relation to the site and noting, I suppose, what's gone before in a previous item, where obviously some individuals and some parties who were maybe cheerleaders for Brexit and the impending funding cliff edge that many programmes and organisations now find themselves facing. then I think that maybe the same people need to take some credit for the omni-shambles that we now find ourselves in terms of the collapse of the Stormont regime, because that's leading to this absence of any certainty around the securing and the allocation of a budget, which, as noted in the report, in the midst of a cost of great crisis, increased fuel poverty, and notably compounded in the last couple of days by the freezing conditions that we've seen across the district and beyond. But I think more than this, there's a failing of Stormont and of the Department for Communities, as noted in the report at 2.3, that and I think the director referred to this too when he was doing the summation, the council participation in the Affordable Warmth Scheme from 2015 was based on the initial premise that it was to be fully funded by DFC, and this is no longer the case. There's been a very obvious failing in relation to this, and as has been spoken by a number of members, the added pressures that this has placed on council, indeed in this current economic situation that we find ourselves in, but before that, and it seems to be getting worse and not better. So perhaps if people maybe were minded to get back to the jobs they were put in place to do, we might see some advance or some improvement on resolving some of these situations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. That's all the speakers, members. That's passed then. Thank you. Those recommendations and proposals. Item 6.2 is to consider a report on events and festivals 23-24. Paper G.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a report on the outworkings of the event strategy working group. The minutes are included in Appendix 1 of the report. It seeks approval to implement funding for the 23 Coronation events, to seek approvals for changes to the Fermanagh 23 event, to seek approval for the revisions to proceed for open calls for events and festival sponsorship, to note the approach for inward sponsorship, and to seek approval to introduce higher charges for the use of the council's estates for events and festivals. The Coronation events in 2023, I know we have received a number of inquiries with regard to the financial support that we may well be given to such events. Discussion took place at the Event Strategy Working Group in relation to it, and it was decided that in the same manner in which the Platinum Jubilee the celebrations of the Platinum Jubilee were undertaken, that the Council adopts a community-focused and community-led approach, that it would support the community-led events to a maximum of £400 per event, and if there was a district-wide event, to a maximum of £2,000 per event. Allocates from both of those funds a maximum of 25,000 to events taking place over the Coronation Bank Holiday weekend from the 5th to the 9th of May, and lights up Enniskillen and Stroul, Enniskillen Castle and Stroul Arts Centre on the 6th of May. And also that if there comes central funding, that it accepts that from central or regional government to defray any of those costs that we may incur. In relation to the Fermanagh event, one of the outdoor events in Fermanagh, which brings a number of participants into the district, there was discussion over the last number of event strategy working group meetings about the operational elements of the event and how we could again defray costs. And it was agreed at the event strategy working group that there would be a reduction in the number of kayaks that we would hire, that there would be the removal of the free hoodies and the goodie bag, and that the entry fee would be increased by £20 for competitive participants and £15 for regular participants, and that the proposed Fermanagh event would cost somewhere in the region of an estimated £10,000 net. Outward sponsorship and the sponsorship fund for the 23-24 year has been reduced in the estimates, and there has been a review of the outward sponsorship, and the recommendations of the review were included in Appendix 2 of the report. It is proposed that the changes to the outward sponsorship, that there would be a deadline call twice per annum, instead of a rolling programme, which has been up until now. that the strategic priorities to include the visitor experience development plan, the place shaping plans for both Enniskillen and Oma, and the local community wellbeing plans would be very much taken account of in assessment of sponsorship. That we would introduce past performance as an assessment criteria in influencing awards that are being brought forward again to the council, and details of cross promotion be included in sponsorship applications and agreements. In relation to inward sponsorship, and I suppose something that we as a council haven't been overly successful in attracting inward sponsorship, that we would focus attention on inward sponsorship for the year, pilot some of the inward sponsorship at our events and partnership opportunities that we could meet with the private sector. And in fact, there is a number of small ones which are identified later in the meeting. And to widen those sponsorship opportunities across the services to generate increased income. It is something that we probably need to put a little bit more effort into in attracting inward and sponsorship to some of our events. Chair, also the hire of council outdoor estate for third party and events. There was a review of the charges, which was very much on an ad hoc basis up until now. There is in Appendix 3 of the report details of charges for hire of our event space and of our estate. It should be noted that for the third sector, that there is no hire charge applicable to the third centre. And as always, the event notification form should be used in looking to use our estate for any events. So, Chair, it's recommended that the notes of the Event Strategy Working Group be noted, that improves the recommendations for the coronation for the bank holiday weekend in 2023 to adopt the community-focused and community-led approach to the coronation, support community-led events up to a maximum of £400 per event, for district-wide events to a maximum of £2,000, to allocate a maximum of £25,000 for events taking place during the weekend, to illuminate Enniskillen Castle, and to offer, or to, if offered, to accept support from regional or central government for those costs. Also, Chair, to approve the implementation of the changes to the Fermanagh 23 event at a net cost of approximately £10,000. To approve the revisions of the sponsorship outward process, and notes the approach to the inward sponsorship, and approves the introduction of the higher charges for use of the FODC's estate for events, activities and festivals.
Thank you. Report, John. Councillor Swift.
Thank you, John, for the extensive report. Totally appreciated. I can approve the recommendation at 8.1. I object to 8.2, and I approve the recommendation from 3 onwards. John, I want to say I'm delighted about the review that has taken place about the Fermanagh event. And as everybody knows, it's Derrigonley Community Centre that helps facilitate and assist with all of the workings of that day. And it's an exceptional event, and it was looking like it may not happen, but I'm delighted now to see that it is going forward. So I thank you all for all of the work on that. And I'm glad to see perhaps a swimming element involved in it. Who knows, I might enter this year. But anyway, and just to say then, Cathaoirleach, on 8.2, why I'm objecting, and members won't be surprised, but I object always to any spend on coronation events for King Royals, etc. I'm a well-known critic of this and any monarchy, I must say, if that isn't understood. And I feel strongly, always have and always will, that there really isn't any place in a supposed equal society for such an institution. And I want to say here tonight, this is not just my opinion, and a bit like John, I've done my own little research on this, you know, on the age groupings that follow such things. And it is well noted that it's the over 65 age group where the level of support for the royal family is highest at 77%, you know, so that's enough said, but that's not to discount people in any age category. But the various amounts at 2.2.2 in the report are startling to me, to say the least, especially given the fact that we're talking about the cost of living crisis here all night. And we are currently in with reduced disposable income. And at that point where it says, even if support did come from central or regional government to defray costs, I'm still stating it's unacceptable for me and for the litany of reasons I've already previously outlined to the council, and most notably the invasion and the partition of my country. And I would once again state here tonight, I serve neither king nor kaiser, but Ireland, and my interests are to look after the people in my super council area who genuinely need financial support. And I firmly believe that this coronation celebration does not. Gurmagat.
Okay, Councillor Swift. Councillor Irvine's next.
Thank you very much. I will second Councillor Swift's proposal with regard to 8.1, 8.3 through to 8.6. And no doubt she will not be surprised when I take a slightly divergent view about 8.2. We're all entitled to our opinion, and I appreciate Bernice's opinion, as well she will probably appreciate mine. And therefore, I will propose a second recommendation that we propose 8.2. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillor McLaughlin is next.
Thank you. I'd like to second Councillor Irvine's proposal to adopt recommendation 8.2. Whilst maybe mainly people over 65, I know that the events that are held in my village are enjoyed by all and are well attended for last year. So I'm assuming that it'll be the same this year, weather permitting. And generally, we've got away with it so far with good weather. So I have another question around the Fermanagh event. I see that there's another event. My son, I'll declare a bit of an interest. My son does these types of events. There's another event in our North area in May, and it's actually sponsored by a well-known, I don't know what sort of drink it is. It's an energy drink, and it seems to have taken to social media here with my son following it and his social group. It seems to have a massive following. And is this something that the organisers of this group are going to look at? So as obviously this was supposed to be self-contained within a certain period of time, and it still hasn't reached that. So I'm just wondering, is that something this group's going to be looking at?
Chair, I'm aware of the event that you talk about in the Aaron North area. When the council, I don't think have an involvement in that at all. It's purely private sector, and quite their promotional of those sorts of events is quite intense. So when you say, is it something that this group is going to look at? It's not something that we are involved in as a council at this point in time.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bale.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to come in and support my colleagues' proposals there around the support on the coronation, and just say, as Fermanagh and Oma's youngest councillor, I am absolutely buzzing for the coronation. And if anyone happens to be in Oma, there will be celebrations at the rugby club, and it will be an absolute blast. All is welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Bale. And Councillor Green. Oh, sorry, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just baffled by one of the other councillors declaring a king of an interest. I wonder, is that a new definition, and could we all have it to see, can we all declare a king of an interest in things? But anyway, that aside, I have no interest in this event at all. It goes completely against everything I believe in. But unlike some of the people sitting on the benches opposite, I am happy enough with my nationality and everything to not disrespect their beliefs. So I would love to see when anything GA or anything Irish or anything Irish language comes before the council, that they would return the same good nature and generosity as us on these benches are around this. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in on the back of support of the Ulster Unionist Party here in we're within the United Kingdom. And as he says, I'm sure it'll be something nearly as good this year. So it will. So happy to support everything that's within the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor McCaffrey.
Good to Carly. Thank you, Chair. Well, just on a couple of points, I'm delighted to see the progress that Fermanagh is making. And I know when I served as Vice Chair, I launched last year's race. So possibly Councillor Swift and I may have to challenge Battle of the Erne West representatives. I can't, hopefully they do reach that stage where it becomes self-contained, and I've no doubt they will. They've endured COVID and everything else. And then Councillor Green had just raised the point that I was thinking about making, and it's something that really doesn't need to be said, but perhaps just it's no harm to say it anyway. We do see, unfortunately, we see monthly recurring arguments around cost and waste of ratepayers' monies and things like that. And other parts of culture have been described as meaningless or pointless or useless. So I would say that although I will not be celebrating the coronation event, I respect everyone else and their views, and people who want to celebrate that event certainly have every single right to, and I would never seek to oppose or prevent or stop that. Unfortunately, Councillor Bell, I have no doubt that the rugby club will be hopping, but that's not a party that I'll be attending. But just when it does come to the other point, the other side of the coin, when it comes to things like the Irish language and comes to Gaelic culture, I would hope that the same generosity and kindness could be shown, and that we have to reach that understanding that not everything that somebody enjoys is going to be necessarily meaningless or pointless to that person. So it's important that we have that parity of esteem, and I would just expect that hopefully we don't see these recurring monthly arguments around Irish bilingual signage, which is important for both communities, not just nationalists, but also to unionist communities as well, I believe. So I'll leave it there, Gurmagad.
Thank you, Councillor McCaffrey. And Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank John for his report. And I want to support all the recommendations in their entirety, Chair. I think there's some very, very good initiatives there, very exciting events, and very worthy of the support of this council. I just want to make a brief comment on the funding for the coronation event. Chair, I'm sure you will agree that Fermanagh and Omagh District Council aspires to be an inclusive community where all traditions and cultures are respected. The coronation of King Charles is an event which is very important to those in the unionist community. And it is something that it is appropriate that this council would fund. And we're not funding it out of the generosity of our hearts, but we're funding it because it is an event that those of the unionist tradition will welcome and celebrate. And those of us who are not of the unionist community, I am sure, Chair, will enjoy the extra bank holiday that weekend, and we can choose to spend it in whatever way we wish. But I do think that as we consider our action plan for our Peace Plus funding, I think it is well that we should bear in mind the need to promote reconciliation and peace building, and that will obviously include supporting cultures that are not similar to our own. So with those words, Chair, I just want to support the recommendation in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Garrity.
Yeah, and I'll be very brief. Thank you, Chairman. And it's just a question for John very briefly. It's 1, 2, 3. bullet point 6 of the recommendation 8.2, if offered to accept support from central or regional government to defray any cost. I'd imagine what are the chances of that, John, of some monies there that could be drawn down? Because again, as been alluded to, we're in a cost of living crisis, and anything available, we'll happily take it. But I would be optimistic that there'd be something there that could be drawn down. But just have you had any further clarity on that for me? Thank you, Chair.
No, Chair, not at this point of view. I would be of the opinion that there may well be some funds that will come through, and I suppose the approval there is welcome in order to be able to accept those funds, to make an application to them and to make and to accept them if we should get a letter of offer. But there is no indication at this stage yet. But I would be hopeful that something will be made available.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, members, we'll just move this on. So we had the recommendations proposed, apart from 8.2, Councillor Swift and seconded by Councillor Irvine. I think we're all agreed on that. And 8.2 then was proposed by Councillor Irvine and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. We can note Councillor Swift's against that. Is that all agreed, members? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 6.3, is to consider report on dark skies accreditation, paper H. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in 2021, we had a presentation from Brian Epsey of the Dark Skies Institute of Ireland. And following that, we agreed that we would look at 2 suitable sites in our district to pursue applications for dark sky status. And I suppose there are different types of accreditation, different types of designation of dark skies. They're listed there at 1.3. There's an International Dark Skies Community, International Dark Skies Parks, International Dark Skies Reserves, International Dark Skies Sanctuaries, and Urban Night Sky Places, all with different levels of accreditation. There are a number of dark skies areas. The one which many of you will probably be aware of is in Davag in Mid-Ulster. But there is also a very well-known one in Ballycroy in County Mayo. And there is actually a festival that takes place there on an annual basis and brings many people to the area in order to explore the dark skies for a week long. And there is also one in County Kerry. There is a quite lengthy certification process, and is largely modelled on UNESCO World Heritage Sites, on the designation of those. But each category or each designation has its own set of guidelines based on the land management, the size, the sky quality, all of those sorts of things. The certification process, which is laid out by the International Dark Skies Association, is highlighted there in section 1.4 of it. And it isn't just a matter of putting in an application, but there's a lot of detailed work and a lot of detailed interaction with the International Dark Skies Association in order to be able to prove that you have a dark skies. But it's also getting communities involved. And it's about education, it's about community involvement, it's about community interaction, it's about everyone buying into the concept of a dark sky area in that location. So there are, section 2 highlights that there's 10 essential criteria, which does, as you would imagine, include nighttime conditions, the criteria about limited light spill and where the Milky Way is visible and all of that. And I know many of you would have seen the great green sky in February of this year. And you can just imagine if you were in total darkness and experiencing that, the beauty that we'll have. The initial work that we have done has highlighted that the best chance, and indeed this was work that was done previously, the best chance of applying for Dark Skies Park accreditation is within the Geopark, at the Marlbank Culkey area, and possibly at Loch Navar, although Loch Navar is slightly tainted with the light domes from Ballycroy, Derrygonnelly, and Garrison area. The designations normally begin, as I say, with a small committee of individuals or landscape management body who want to seek formal protection of the nighttime landscape, and I suppose there is the real need for community involvement in here. Community involvement is actually central, as it is in the geopark, I have to say, is central to the certification process. The Lakelands, Culkey Lakelands Geopark have been actively engaged with communities in relation to dark skies over the last number of years, and enlisted in Appendix 1 is details of a number of events which have taken place in the Culkey Lakelands Geopark area in relation to dark skies, and I know a number of the members have attended some of those events, and therefore it is at a good starting point to look for accreditation and to start the process. Following advice from Armagh Planetarium, and desktop research of the various light pollution in other places of our district, the two other further sites that have been identified in the Fermanagh district and Fermanagh and Omagh district council area, maybe Davag itself on our side of the district, so an extension of that park, or indeed at Slieve Bay. So the Slieve Bay desk research has indicated that it might meet the requirements, and in order to take a project like that forward at Slieve Bay, like I say, a community participation is absolutely vital. So it would involve seeking support from the Slieve Bay Partnership for the proposal to pursue a dark skies application, and an agreement that the community would act as an applicant body supported from the council. With advice from the partnership and the community support officer to identify suitable groups to progress the citizen science light monitoring. So there is a light monitoring project that has to take place, and to deliver those program of events similar to something that has taken place in the Culkey Lakelands Geopark, and then submit a formal inquiry into the international dark skies places. I have to say, it is not an easy process. It is a lengthy process. It is not something that will take place in 6 months, a year. It is something that with a view for very long term to look for dark skies accreditation. But I have to say, I do think that the benefits, not just from a tourism point of view, but also to promote our area as one which is environmentally very sustainable area. I think those benefits are great. So therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the Council, subject to the approval of the Geopark Committee, submits a formal initial inquiry to become an international dark skies park, that it approaches Mid-Ulster to explore the extension of the Dava Dark Skies Park into the Fermanagh and Omagh district, and makes representation to the Slieve Bay Partnership to act as the lead organisation in developing an application for dark skies status for the Slieve Bay area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
John. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll start off by proposing the recommendations as listed. I suppose, having read this, I see the dark skies at Darva is actually in Mid-Ulster, and just obviously are on the periphery of FODC. And I'm reading on, obviously, to be put my Fermanagh hat on. Certainly, I was excited to see that Slieve Bay in my own area was listed, and Loch Navar. So I think it would be very nice moving forward if we, like, obviously the closeness of the one in Dava is it's already there. So it would be nice to obviously see something in this area, in the Fermanagh area, in either Geopark or Loch Navar, or indeed Slieve Bay, come forward, because it'll obviously, it's you know, we were all very excited with the recent Northern Lights, and it is something that obviously will create quite a bit of excitement out there. So certainly happy enough to propose the recommendations as listed, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was delighted to see this report. The Dark Skies is a very interesting initiative, and I first heard about it back when the Slieve Bay Master Plan was being developed, and it was one of the proposals that was put in it. So I'm delighted to see that Slieve Bay is included. Electoral areas affected, likely to be Ayrn North, Ayrn West, and Mid Tyrone. Well, Slieve Bay is in Ayrn East, so I'm just wondering that maybe that should be amended to see that. And as a member of the Slieve Bay Partnership, I'm going to kind of declare an interest. So.
We'll correct that, DA, John. Councillor, what do we see? Councillor Swift's next.
Yeah, Gurmagat, Kirlock, and thank you, John, for your extensive report on all of this. And your keen interest is visible as well in your explanation. So your excitement is well embraced, and I fully support all of the recommendations here. I'm just loving it all, and I think it's going to be a massive asset whenever it does happen. And I appreciate it will take a long time, but that said, at least we've started. And that's the main thing. It's such a brilliant idea, and it's well on the agenda, as you know, with the Cuilcagh Lakelands, and we talked about it extensively at the meeting this week, and they are going to seek approval with their ambassadors, and their future plans obviously includes that space, amphitheatre style in their plan for the stargazing. And as you talked about yourself there with the recent sighting of the Aurora Borealis, I went up to Loch Navar and got a good view, took photographs. As you say, sometimes the bright lights from Derragonly doesn't help the nighttime sightings, but sure, you know, we're still sparkling, aren't we? But the Milky Way and all the majestic celestial views of recent has been just a phenomenon for people in the area and the community. There's a lot of buy-in already to the night sky and the dark skies. And I would hope as well that some of the suggestions coming forward about putting lights here and there and getting lights around different parks and that doesn't conflict or impinge on what we're trying to do here, because I do feel very strongly in terms of everything, our biodiversity, our whole environment and place, that we certainly pursued this as the best initiative and way forward, and that we get the whole community buy-in and encourage everybody to do the same. Gurmagat, Kirlock.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, John, for all the good work you've put in there. And it's very interesting as well. And I'm glad to see Loch Navar mentioned there as a potential spot there. But and also Marlbank and Culture as well. So just happy to support the proposal. Fair play to you.
Thank you. And Councillor Dan Armstrong.
Yeah, I'm seeking to reinstate Ayrn North into this report. I remember some time ago we did have a meeting, or we discussed this topic, and former Councillor Curry and I both put forward Finloch, the area around Finloch, the inlet, the waterway there. And I'm looking back at the Independent newspaper from the 2017, which the headline is Stargazing Retreats from Bubble Pods in Ireland, and we know they're in Ayrn North. They are here. Remote locations, dark sky reserves, and ideal conditions for observing the cosmos. You know, I certainly do support celestial Cuilcagh, by all means, yes, but Finloch, the heavenly bodies, studying the ink-black unpolluted skies of County Fermanagh, isn't that just wonderful? So could I just propose that Finloch is kept on the radar, because we have so many special places, Slieve Bay included, and I think, you know, while the work is ongoing for Cuilcagh and the educational impact or possibilities are superb there too, I still think, you know, we've got an exceptional area with a clear sky, and certainly others to consider. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Did we get a seconder for the original? Are you happy to second, Councillor Armstrong? Or could we have even Councillor Feely was on? Are you happy to second that overall recommendation? And we just need a seconder then for that proposal about Finloch, Robert, or Councillor Barton.
I'll certainly second the proposal for Finloch. Just when you speak of the Dark Skies Park, how many of you have taken the advantage to visit Mid-Ulster Dark Skies as a council here, because I have visited, and yes, it's excellent. I'm just wondering, you know, it's next door to us. You're looking at proposing something, surely it would be an idea to go and see the product in action, so to speak.
Yep, there we go. That's a visit for councillors. Councillor on WebEx, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I'm more than happy to support. I think I'll start by just a wee accuracy issue on page 2 there, and I appreciate that this may well have been copied from another document because it deals with item 1.4 in the list of the process of certification. But on the first point there's an "and" before the word "suitable," which obviously should be "a," and "identifies" is in the document instead of "identified." But moving on from what's been said, I think it's very important. The document and the report, and I suppose the initial proposal was that we would investigate at least 2 sites in the district area, with the preference being to keep things equal, one being in the Tyrone end of the district and one being in the Fermanagh end of the district. I'm very happy to see the discussions around the extension of the Davos site, because like the previous speaker there, it's a site that I have visited, and probably the councillor in this district that would be closest to the actual Davos site. And again, just out where I'm living here in Craigan, especially the last couple of days and weeks with the frost and the clear skies, when you go outside your house, you really, it can take your breath away, not just the cowl, but the actual, when you put your head up and look at the skies, it really is something that we have to behold and we have to protect. And Councillor Swift raised the issue, I suppose, of lighting being out of place and extensive lighting. And again, there was a news in the story not that way long ago in Belfast City around the flights and the impact it's had on migratory birds up there. So it is something we need to be wary that it's not just the lights, or not just ourselves and not just humans that use these lights or that are affected by them. But I'd like to raise a further proposal that officers would actually sound out the possibility of a meeting with the relevant Mid-Ulster District Council personnel, and indeed representatives from the OM Dark Skies Park and Observatory, to discuss, I suppose, the process that's involved, the potential pitfalls and benefits, and maybe sound out best practice as we proceed with this. And I think just on a final point, when we talk about community involvement, it was last June in Gortin, there was a Illuminators event organised by Green Space Dark Skies, and there was a facilitatory meeting out in the Gortin Glen Forest Park in the run up to that. It was a very popular and very well attended event. There's a YouTube video up from it, and I think some of the footage and some of the interviews are very telling on the impact maybe that this has on people, how special it is and how well worth preserving and protecting it is. So maybe, as well as checking out the Dark Skies Park, that people would maybe check out that link in that video as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm very happy to see this now proceeding. I think somebody said that if you don't make the most of your sky, if you're a rural area, you're losing half of your potential tourism market, because an increasing number of people are very aware of the importance of going to places where you can actually see the sky at night, and we are very lucky. We've been unlucky in terms of getting an investment and development and all that, but one of the consequences of that is that we still have a fairly pristine environment in some regards, and certainly the sky is one of those where we can make a decisive impact. It is notable, I think, that easily more than half the world's population, as far as I understand, can no longer see the Milky Way or even potentially a star where they live. It's there's so much light pollution. So it is something that we probably take for granted and do not realize just what it is. That's often just outside our door. And I want to concur with the comments there from Councillor Swift that, we have to take care about this when it comes to any form of lighting that we're proposing in a rural area. One thing I note is I was out at a house not far out of Ballinalack, quite close to Enniskillen, really, and I was again shocked at the lighting quality that I saw. that you could see things. You could definitely see the Milky Way. And you know, you don't have to go too far away if it's a good clear night to see things. But one of the questions I have is really around the lighting. Now, I know that there's been new lights put in by the department. I think they're more designed to reduce expenditure than to reduce light pollution. The two things are tied. I do understand it is possible to have much lower intensity lighting insofar as it still will do the job. It can be coned to actually reduce energy consumption, reduce the amount of light going into the atmosphere, into the sky, and also into the environment. And that reduces the ecological impact of lighting as well. So I'd like to propose that we would write to the department to initiate a further discussion on the possibility of considering lower Kelvin lighting, which still has the same intensity on the ground, but actually has a dramatically lower impact on the night sky. The other thing I wanted to ask a question on is there's a variety in the documentation there of accreditations. It's not simply around those are coming forward in terms of specific areas and so on. There are dark sky parks and dark sky communities, and I think these are things we should definitely see to engage with. Is it possible to reimagine our communities so that we have less light going into the sky and into the ambient, and more light concentrated where we need the light at night? It will save electricity, but it'll also dramatically improve, even within those towns and communities, the quality of the sky that people can see even in the towns. So I think that's something that we should definitely look at. And I'm very, very happy to see this proceeding now in the Culca. And I note the inclusion of the idea that there may be areas within the Culca Geopark where this is taken forward. And I would certainly identify that, you know, there's a lot more areas where you can see a great sky than just going up to the top of the Culca. And then the final point is I also welcome in the fact that that there's an interest in this in other areas, and I'm particularly happy to see Slieve Bay included. I know that that is an area, again, that has suffered from, well, it's never really had any significant investment, and as a result, it is pristine, again, really important ecological environment. And again, we could see, you know, a useful contribution to the tourism economy of that area in this way, and I would like to see that happen as well. And if there's potential in our north, that's even better. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor Adam Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting report, very good to read, and definitely a very worthwhile and good initiative that we should definitely look into and continue down the path. So supportive of the recommendations, Chair. I just have a couple of points and a question to ask here as well. I was looking through the report and doing some reading around this. It's required, I believe, to have a light management plan. I would assume before we would continue with this, that such a light management plan would be brought to us, just because I would hate to see, say, how it would impact on planning, for example, say for housing in rural areas in particular, how it would have that impact and what knock-ons it would have. Just need to be carefully considered, because I don't want to see our villages miss out on growth opportunities such as housing. And I do have to mention, of course, in Belcoo, you know, we can't have this if it impinges on vital and important facilities such as lighting on the cottage meadow, which would be very important to the people in Belcoo. But I do note there we're applying for an international dark sky park, which actively says that the parks, for example, implement good outdoor lighting and provide dark sky programs. So potentially, Chair, it could dovetail really nicely, lighting in the cottage lawn and with such a project. But looking forward to seeing how we progress with this. It'll be a long road, no doubt. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sean Clark.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be one here is going to be against this, especially the Dava one, because people are forgetting that there's a lights a lot of people fought hard for at around the football field, and I'm surprised anybody would want to deprive them of the lights at the football field, because, you know, it's just, I think it's, you know, you need to remember that, you know, I'm sure they would have to be switched off as well, you know. So that's basically my short point here.
All right, Councillor, we'll record that for you. And Councillor Deehan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I want to support this proposal in its entirety. And I would also like to second Councillor McAleer's proposal to meet with the Mid-Ulster District Council and also the Dark Skies Park and Observatory representatives to see how we can progress this very important issue. Chair, I just want to say that, you know, being able to observe the night sky, you know, it is, for me, certainly more than just observing a pretty awesome sight, and is more than a tourist attraction. But I think really what it reminds us of is, you know, the immensity of the universe, the immensity of our own galaxy, and how important it is for us to protect the blue planet Earth, because we are very much alone. And so far, despite many amazing space exploratory technology, we have not yet been able to identify any planet other than our own where life exists. But we have seen over a very few decades the damage that we have done to our planet, and the reduction even in our own backyard of biodiversity caused by human activity. So I think it is a reminder to us of how precious our Earth is, and of the need to progress climate change initiatives and ensure that as we go forward, we really stick by our policy regarding climate change and the protection of our environment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor John Coyle?
Thank you, Chair. I am out looking at the sky tonight, and I want to fully endorse Councillor Armstrong's proposal. I don't live that far from Finlaw, and I'm looking north over the Pettigo Plateau, and I can see the array of different stars, you know, over our beautiful Fermanagh and Omagh district and into Donegal. So it is, you're looking up at the plough and the cluster, and, you know, might not be the right technical, but I fully support the technical names for the installations. But I think that the meeting for us to learn more, and to learn about what way we need to go forward with dark skies, and I fully support putting Erin North back on the agenda for a dark sky area, because it is a fantastic round Finlaw and Castle Caldwell. It is good in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, thank you. We have that proposed and seconded. We've also Councillor McAleer's proposal seconded by Councillor Deehan around arranging a meeting. Is that all agreed? Okay, and then there was a proposal by Councillor O'Coffey about writing to the department, ask them to consider changing the lighting type. Is that right, Kim? Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Deehan, all agreed? Okay, thank you. Move on now, members. We're on item 6.4 to consider a report of the Director of Community and Wellbeing.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are a number of aspects to this. One is in relation to the implementation and the publishing of a book, The 3 Stories from Mid-Ulster Gaeltacht, which has been developed for publication. It's a selection of 3 of the best folk tales from Gaeltacht, Winchester, Linney, and it presents them as found in O'Toole's original 1933 edition. It is part of our Irish language programme, and we have the cost of it to date is approximately £10,000. We are hoping to sell the books at 20,000 or £20. We're doing well at 20,000 at £20 each. We have printed 500 copies. All indications to date are that we will easily sell the 500 copies, which will cover our full costs, and we may have to go back for more prints in relation to them. The second part of the report is an additional funding for advice services. DFC are proposing that Fermanagh and Omagh District are provided with additional funding to meet additional payments for eligible staff members in both Community Advice Fermanagh and Omagh Independent Advice Service to the tune of 19,500. The third part is in relation to an MOU to support asylum seekers. We are DFC again are providing funds £79,262 to work in partnership where we're planning to work in partnership with Orano to develop and deliver a needs-based support and advocacy programme, a crisis fund and an activity programme for asylum seekers in the council area. I have to state at this time we have no asylum seekers through this programme. And there's no indication of any asylum seekers in the future, but we do plan to set up the system should that case should it arise. The fourth element of the report is in relation to inward sponsorship, and I highlighted this previously. We have been approached by a local business, the Westville Hotel, for a collaborative approach on pre-theatre dining experience in partnership with the Ardone Theatre. Is something which we propose we undertake on a pilot basis for 12 months just to see how it operates for ourselves. And it is maybe the type of inward sponsorship that I spoke about previously, where we should be getting in collaboration with the private sector in order to develop our service and enhance the services. The second element of it is in relation to Enniskillen Castle, and we have recently undertaken a call out to the tourism trade to offer 10% discount on tickets for their open air theatre performances this summer. And when we talk about the tourist trade, it doesn't matter whether you're an hotel or a B&B, that you could offer this to people who are staying in your residence in order to support the local economy, to encourage people to come and to spend a night maybe in the district whilst they're coming to, which have been in recent years, very successful open air theatre performances at the museum. So therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the Council notes the publication of the 3 stories from Mid Tyrone Gaeltacht, approves additional funding for the general advice providers, Community Advice Fermanagh and Omagh Independent Advice Services, notes the receipt of the MOU for financial support of 79,262 from the Executive Office and approves the development and delivery of services with Orano, notes the opportunity for the Ardone Theatre to work in partnership with the Westville Hotel, notes the Enniskillen Castle 10% discount to offer tourism trade discount for the summer open air theatre performances, and notes the update to the inward sponsorship guidance to include partnership working.
Thank you, John. And then there as well, Councillor Swift.
Support the recommendation, approve that. John, just one quick question. On the reprint, is there much cost involved in that? On the reprint of the stories, because it sounds like it might have to take place on the books. And then just to finish off by saying I think that's a brilliant idea, the pre-theatre dining experience. I can't wait to enjoy that whenever that happens. Just that quick question, but happy to support the recommendation, Gurma.
Okay, Chair, I don't have the details of the costs themselves, but they will be significantly lower than the force print. So anything that we would get in terms of sales will be at a surplus to the council.
Thank you, and Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you again. Brilliant recommendations, and as Councillor Swift, I was involved in a book project last year, and there's a lot of selling in 1,000 books, no matter what topic they're on, but. And the reprint generally comes in about half price for the second set once the page makeup's already been done. The recommendation, I'm going to put for recommendations. I think anybody who can, any asylum seeker who can make it to Fermanagh with our lack of infrastructure and public transport deserves all the support they can get.
You'll second that report. Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on the, I welcome this report and I welcome all aspects of it. In particular, wanted to speak, and thank you, John, for the report. Wanted to speak about the working with theatre. Is that an exclusive partnership, or should other restaurants or establishments be interested in the same, offering the same incentive? Would that be extended to other parties? Thank you.
Chair, I think when we spoke about this earlier on in the meeting about the inward sponsorship is something that we are keen to develop, and certainly it is not exclusive to one provider. It's something that we would encourage and we will be actively seeking, but we will be bringing all of those initiatives through Council for approval.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll start off by saying very appreciative and looking forward to the planned publication of the 3 stories from the Mid-Throne Gaeltacht. And as someone born and reared in Mucharloney, I look forward to the book launch in the coming months. And I'm just, I suppose, querying, has the council planned an official launch event for the book launch? And maybe if not, I would propose that we do so. It would also, I believe, prove interesting and beneficial to the local representatives if an event could be organised to highlight the importance and the significance of Mucharloney, not only within this district, but its cultural and historical significance. And I'm wondering, is this something that we can liaise with Dr. McGowan, Dr. Smith, to organise? Because I was at a talk with him 2 weekends ago, and he is really a font of knowledge on this particular subject, and to hear it quoted back a century or 2 ago that the kingdom of Mucharloney was on a par with the kingdom of Kerry and even more valuable than the kingdom of the Mournes was quite a revelation as someone from the area. So I think it is maybe something that we should investigate and should look into in terms of promoting our history and our culture, but also in terms of maybe finding future avenues to attract potential tourists too. Moving on just through the points as quickly as I can here, I would welcome the well-deserved additional funding for staff working at both the Omagh Independent Advice Services and the Citizens Advice in Fermanagh. I do welcome the funding to support asylum seekers, and I suppose contrary to the soundings and the aptly named illegal migration bill, which has been sped through the Houses of Parliament in London at the minute, it kind of runs contrary to the blatantly racist policies and line which has been told by the Conservative government at the minute. So I think we do have to do anything in our power to work towards welcoming asylum seekers and migrants. And I think our previous work in terms of with groups like the Northwest Migrants Forum and Deportations Belfast and United Against Racism is all positive steps, but we need to keep that going as we see the racism that's being espoused not only by the far right in our own country, but also by the government across the water. And finally, I would welcome the collaborative working between the Westville and the Ardoin, and I think that is a positive thing, as Councillor Swift has noted there, and something that should be encouraged as we work to promote ourselves even further as a tourist destination. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Very happy with these proposals in general. I just wanted to speak a little bit on the republication of 3 stories from Scailta Mucharloney. I think that's very positive. It is. I think there were 60. Let's just check. I think there were 68 stories in the original book. And indeed, the original book has a number of photos as plates within it, and I'm wondering if we've managed to be able to include those, because I think that they would have an interest and resonance for the local community there, perhaps of people who, if they don't know them, they may know certainly their relatives. Obviously, I think it's important to note the work of Dr. O'Toole, who collected those in the 20s and 30s. He also incidentally collected stories by Sean Eamon Rory, who was one of the last Shanachie of up in Gowland in the Cavan Gaeltacht of that time as well. And it's also worth obtaining those if you have an interest in it. One thing I noticed is that we've translated them into Cajun, which is standardized Irish. And I have to say, while I think it's useful to have that perhaps for some people, a great portion of the interest in these among, for example, Irish language enthusiasts is actually in having a copy where it is in the original form. The actual book itself is quite rare to obtain at this stage, although you can obtain it if you're lucky enough. But I think we should try to include the original Irish, if possible, in some of these publications, because each area had its own idiom and words and phrases that they would have used differently than other areas, and that itself is quite interesting for anyone with a real interest in this sort of history and also ways of expressing ideas. So sometimes making it into standard Irish is a problem that can reduce the richness of the text. So having said that, it is still an excellent initiative, and perhaps it's something that we could see followed up on. There are other texts also of relevance to our council, none so late, really, I have to say, that are of the same quality. But certainly if you go backwards in history, there are really important texts written in Fermanagh and Omagh area, which we could definitely look at, and I'm sure it would raise awareness of the intense richness of this legacy, whether it's linguistic, cultural, or in terms of folklore. So, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That is proposed and seconded, the document. Have we got a launch event? Councillor McAleer,
Chair, we had planned to have a launch event in early April. The editor, though, is not available due to personal circumstances. So I think, as shown in the report there, we will hold a launch event. We will organise a launch event as soon as we possibly can.
And Councillor O'Coffey's comments can be
yes
done. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on now.
Chair, sorry, just the second part of my proposal in relation to inviting Dr. McGowan in to speak on the scale to Montcherloney and the importance of significance of Montcherloney area. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't pick that up actually. To invite him into an informal meeting or that sort of thing, Councillor, is it?
Yeah, I suppose it was just sounding out maybe with the director, if that was maybe something that would be possible. I know
we'll go to Councillor McElduff just before John.
Second.
Okay, I have a great interest in that as well, scale to Montcherloney. You know, it's a great body of literature, and it's Tyrone Irish, you know, as was spoken by the people in Greencastle, Gorton, Cregan, Ruski, you know, Lar, Huron, up until the 1950s as a first language. But that's that. And it became a great topic for study by linguists at Queen's University, Ulster and Arena. Some people went out on their bicycles and met native speakers and recorded them, all of that. So these stories are very, very important. But this might help Corleor McGilla here. It's my understanding that there is an official launch of the book, and it takes place on Friday, March the 31st, and it'll be at Dunullu. Now, that may not be the case. That's what I have been advised.
I think, Chair, that has been postponed in the recent days because of, like I say, because of issues with the editor's unavailability.
Right. Okay, that was my understanding until this evening, that they're working towards a date for a launch, publication launch. Thank you.
Okay, you'll second that, and that's agreed, and then we'll forward details of the launch when it's available.
Yeah, Chair, just in relation to Paddy McGowan's invitation for an informal meeting, it may be better to hold an event where the public would be able to come to for a question and answer session or something, maybe at the launch or whatever, to hold a launch where he gives a talk on an open event, rather than just strictly for an informal event here with members.
Yeah, okay, I think members are happy enough with that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on to item 7 now. Just bear in mind the time, members. So these reports are for information. 7.1 is to note business case report, paper J, and we can go to the recommendations if we could have a proposer and seconder. Councillor McLaughlin is
Proposed to note, Chair.
Okay, and a seconder, Councillor Robertson. Thank you. 7.2 is to note report on proposal of application notice, paper K. And again, the recommendation there at item 8. Proposer, please, Councillor Paul Stevenson. A seconder, Councillor Rainey. Thank you. 7.3 is to note update report on Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board. I think there's a set of minutes there. Just a proposer, please, for that. Councillor Robinson and Councillor Stevenson to second. Thank you. And then 7.4 is to note report on the census 2021. Population and households for data zones publication, paper M, for noting as well. Councillor Swift and Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Councillor McAleer is looking in on this one.
Yeah, Chair, I was happy to propose our second as needed, but I think just noting the fact or the figures provided there that suppose while some people may lament that there's been a population decrease here and that people are being forced to emigrate away from this area to find jobs and the like, the actual figures there would show that the population is, albeit slowly, is actually increasing. So I think it is just important to bear that in mind going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on to correspondence, there is a bit of correspondence, a bit of AOB as well, members. So 8.1 is to consider correspondence dated the 15th of February from EE regarding the EE mast at Brookborough. It's just for noting this, members. Councillor, I don't know if you should have asked if the mast was found or not, Seamus. I think there was a mast lost the last time. Councillor Swift.
Gurmagat, and look, I'm happy enough to note, but with a bit of disdain because, I see Councillor Green indicating to speak. You know, again, this is a classic fob off, in my opinion, and I'm not accepting it from EE. And whilst I'm not from Brookborough, you know, we all drive over the vast area of the Super Council, and we don't like our signal dropping no matter where we are driving through or where we are from. So all of these providers, EE, Vodafone, you name it, providers, service providers, so-called, are negligent again with their signal to customers. And in this instance, I would be asking to contact them back again because we still are having areas that are without signal. And I want to give mention to Monet again. We've never received a substantial response from them, right from the bottom of the long shot to near enough Springfield. That there is absolutely no signal, and I experienced it again tonight, so that's why I'm still quite cross about it. I was trying to get rid of a few calls on the way in, and that couldn't happen because of the in and out signal. So EE will not fob us off, and while I note in the response back to us that they're saying if any customers have been affected, well, an elected rep wouldn't have raised the issue if he didn't or wasn't aware of constituents being affected. And I know while they say they're going to treat each case individually, we want a response collectively.
Okay, you'll propose to note that. Thank you. And Councillor Green?
Yeah, and I presume Bernice is saying to write back to them again. So if she is, I am seconding that. I would, again, it is a letter that's just basically fogging us off. They know full well, yeah, indeed, they found the mast. They didn't seem to be able to find it for months on end when customers in my area who are totally reliant on EE because there's no other service, they knew the mast was down. They know the area that it covers, but they're throwing it back on the customer to contact them individually, knowing full well that they're going to end up getting off with cutting customers off for, it must have been over 2 months, and just taking their money. So I think we need to, if Bernice is agreeable, we need to write back to them and demand that they contact the customer. They know the area that mast covers. They know they're the only provider in that area, and any customer in that area deserves at least 2 months refund on their EE bill. So I'll second Bernice's proposal if that's agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll take Councillor Swift and Councillor Green to propose and second, and then I'll show that second proposal to right back. Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. No, fully supportive of the previous speakers. I suppose the disdain even that this is addressed to whoever forwarded the letter and not even to the council is one thing that kind of sets the tone for the remainder of the letter. I'm wondering if it would be possible that we could advertise through the council channels that people in that area who have been affected by a loss of coverage from EE are entitled to recompense. Just to try and get the word out there and promote that, because the fact that we're getting this kind of very short response from their executive customer resolutions team, no logo, no heading on the paper or anything, is that something that we could do maybe? And if so, if it is something that we can do, I would propose that we would maybe raise a bit of awareness that people who aren't aware of this would know that this is something that they can do, as well as sending a letter back. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor, we'll go to Councillor O'Coffey at this time.
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to second that proposal from Councillor McAleer. I'm sure the councillors from the Ur and East area would be well capable of getting the word out, but I think the council should certainly be promoting the availability of compensation. At the end of the day, this is exactly how they like to deal with us, our individuals. Everyone is individual. They don't like people standing together, and hopefully this council, I think it's putting them on their toes. The fact that Councillor Green raised it at this body, that they basically ignored or couldn't even find one of their own masks. This is ludicrous stuff, and then to be exposed and then to say, okay, well, we'll deal with it on an individual basis rather than through our own through the elected representative body of this area. I think it's a disgrace, frankly. So if we can encourage people to make a significant claim, it'll teach these people that you can't run roughshod over communities, and this council is fighting. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. I'd just like to remind people that some parts of this district have never got mobile signal. In parts of Gorton, Greencastle, indeed outside the district over into Glenalley. So I think in all that we need to remember those people.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Barton.
Thank you very much indeed. And while I support everything that's been said previously to me, Councillor Clark, you've stolen my thunder. There are indeed certain parts of mid Tyrone that do not have signal. In fact, I was out dealing with an emergency today in mid Tyrone. The house was left without a house phone, and they were standing without mobile phones that were no good, absolutely no signal. And in this day and age, it's a disgrace that people don't have a phone signal, at least one of the providers of mobile signals. So I would like to ask the council to take a look into that and perhaps have a meeting with some of the mobile phone providers, in particularly with a look at Mid Tyrone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members. The proposal around the social media, Cameron, do you want a word on that? Yeah, you should take that forward and look into that. Okay, and then Councillor Barton's proposal, we can incorporate that. Follow up on that. Do we need a seconder for that? Can we tie that in just a seconder for Councillor Barton? Councillor Stevenson, thank you. Okay. Councillor Bell, oh, you were just a second. Okay, members, thank you. Next item of correspondence is dated the 22nd of February, 8.2 from Department of Education regarding a meeting to discuss the Strill Shared Education Campus. I think they're willing to meet, so Kim?
Yes, they are willing to meet, and we have scheduled an informal meeting for the 5th of April at 2:30 p.m.
Okay, there's a date, members, 5th of April at 2:30 p.m. Councillor Green?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, there's another shared campus going on in our electoral area, the Bruipera one, and it seems to have, for the last 3 years, almost come to a standstill because it's at business case, and I don't know what's happening. There doesn't seem to be any progress. So maybe would there be a possibility of that we could ask whoever's coming to this meeting to ask them about the Bruitborough campus as well, to get an update on it.
Okay, Councillor Green. Councillor Deehan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I welcome this opportunity of a meeting, Chair, and I want to propose to note the correspondence and that we proceed with the date for the informal meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll second Councillor Deehan's proposal that we note the correspondence and that we welcome the meeting. I have it already in my diary. Thank you.
And Councillor Bell, thank you. Or Councillor Bell, or hands down again, maybe. Okay.
There was just a second that, Chair, but it's all good. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Councillor Green made a proposal or not, but if he did, I'll second it.
Second, okay.
All right.
And we can ask the question if they'll give us an update in Bruitborough. Thank you, Kim. I think 8.3 and 8.4 can come together. Correspondence dated the 23rd of February from Invest NI regarding independent review of Invest NI, and 8.4 is correspondence dated the 23rd of February from Department for Economy regarding the independent review of Invest NI.
Yes, the first piece of correspondence from Invest NI advises that the department will be taking the lead on the development of the action plan, and the department has indicated that there is a need for profound change and that they are considering the right response to the review and aim to progress the development and publication of an action plan in the near future.
Okay. Councillor Armstrong.
I'd like to propose to note, but I would like to express also maybe concern about the effectiveness of the review, because the review, the independent review of economic policy of 2009, which made similar recommendations to this report, the promise of transformational change that followed the criticism has yet to be delivered. This is a body that has a budget of more than 160 million in each of the last 5 years. And I would like to see evidence on the economic impact, and the true additionality is that it is provided with that funding. But I don't, on past records, not too sure whether we can be assured of that. But thank you. It's just a comment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that proposal, Councillor McLaughlin.
Okay, I'd like to second Councillor Armstrong's proposal.
Okay. It's both pieces proposed and second. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair. Again, I'm very concerned about the response that we've actually received, because when you look at the response, first of all, from Invest NI, as the Director rightly says, they state quite plainly that the Department of the Economy have indicated that they will take the lead in the development of the action plan in response to the review's recommendations. But when you read the second letter from the Permanent Secretary, they muddy the waters by saying over the coming weeks, the department will work with Invest NI to agree our joint response to the review. Now, this was a review that was damning, is probably putting it lightly, into the actions and the capabilities and the workings of Invest NI, and there's probably not a member within the chamber that doesn't have some gripe or some complaint about the effectiveness of Invest NI for this particular region. But I'd like to actually go back to both and find out who's running the show here. Is the tail wagging the dog? It's reminiscent, I suppose, of having a department that looks after environment and agriculture, and there's seemingly this lack of a differentiation or a lack of clarity over who's supposed to be doing what. So that's a very serious concern I would have. I don't know if there is support in the chamber for going back, but I think there is a need to kind of clarify what's going on here and what the response is going to be, and who is going to be authoring or writing this response. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAleer. Okay, members, you've heard that proposal. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy to second this. I have almost no faith in Invest NI's capacity to deliver for this area. Their approach to the economy is based on a failed economic model. But let's see, even if they're a bit able to address the criticisms that's been made by a regulatory authority of their own. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Chair, could I ask Councillor McAleer, just could we include the question about the previous review that it hasn't reported, and just our lack of confidence in that, if Councillor McAleer would be willing to include that in the letter? Thank you.
So our members agreed that we would, I got that from Councillor McAleer, okay, and the members agreed on that proposal. Right back, thank you. 8.5 is to consider correspondence dated the 27th of February regarding the Northern Ireland Housing Conference. Is there anybody who wants to go, or just for noting? Just proposer to note, please. Councillor McLaughlin, seconder. Councillor Stevenson, thank you. 8.6 is correspondence dated the 3rd of March from Donegal County Council regarding the variation to the County Donegal Development Plan in respect of a One Energy Policy Framework, variation number 2. Kim.
It's just for noting, Chair. It's for information purposes, it's not for consultation.
Just a proposer to note, please. Councillor Barton, and seconded by Councillor Stevenson. Thank you. Councillor McAleer. On 8.6.
Chair, just take me a wee second to unmute there. No, there is one particular aspect, I suppose, that did jump out at me when I was looking through this document, is one of the revisions that has been carried out into the proposal, or the submitted proposal, is highlighting, I suppose, the impact of or potential impact of development on land near ground or lakes where there are freshwater pearl mussels. And I suppose that's very relevant for my own DE and for this district, just to be mindful. These are Ireland's only globally endangered species, and they're only found really in the purest of fresh water and clear water. And we know, obviously, across the district and across the entirety of the north and beyond, the difficulties we've had in terms of water purity and clean access to clean water. So I think that's something that we need to be bearing in mind, I suppose, as we move towards our LDP meeting and later in the week, and as we look at our development plan. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Okay, members, that's passed as well, or noted. The next item, 8.7, is to consider correspondence dated the 7th of March regarding potential imminent termination of service for most vulnerable elderly and disabled persons in Fermanagh and NI-DFI Rural Community Transport Fund and threat post-April 23. Members, you have seen these pieces of correspondence, a very important and alarming issue. I've had representations on this, and indeed we met with EasyLink this morning. Now, the way I want to do it, members, I had 3 members contact me privately about AOB on this item, so I'll bring them in first. That was Councillor Thompson, Councillor Blake and Councillor McElduff. Please do be just mindful of time, members, but we do know the importance of this issue. So, Councillor Thompson first.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as you say, it's a very important item, and I'll not take too long on it. As you know, Chair, yourself, your dad, Tom McCann, MLA, and myself met with senior representatives EasyLink this morning in their premises in Oma. And I suppose the things that we got to know about, and particularly over the weekend, I've been contacted by several constituents, even within Oma itself, with regard to the loss of the service or the potential loss of the service. So the outcome of that there, without going into too much of the detail of it, because I know others want to speak on it, Tom Buchanan, MLA, will be requesting a meeting set up with a permanent secretary, and this will be a cross-party event. All parties will be invited to it. But with regard to the council, I think that we should be writing to the permanent secretary of the Department for Infrastructure, asking for a meeting as well, because this is going to be very important as we move forward. There's a lot of vulnerable people out there, elderly, that rely on this service on a daily basis, and that's covering a lot of stuff. That dial-a-lift service has been a means of keeping the elderly and the most vulnerable in our rural community connected, and to allow them to continue to actively participate in society. And EasyLink, the chief executive, told us this morning that they have delivered almost 27,000 passenger trips across the Oma Strabane and Foyle area. So that's it. It will have a detrimental effect on the community as a whole, and will threaten the workforce and services to other groups throughout the area as well. So I leave my brief comments there, Chair. I know others want in, but it's just to put that on record that Tom Buchanan, the MLA, has already requested a meeting with the Permanent Secretary, and that this meeting will be an all-party meeting, and that this council should follow suit. Thank you.
Okay, and
Wait,
Councillor Blake. Okay, Councillor Blake.
Yeah, well, would agree with what Councillor Thompson has already said. I think the impact on this service could be greatly felt in the community. I think its importance can never be underestimated. And I know from speaking to some constituents that I had today about the importance of it, especially when I think in light of James Martin's Oscar win that he's just received about a local family that Down syndrome who rely on the service for the child to be able to go to drama lessons. So I think in light of what's happened with James Martin, you cannot underestimate the importance of this service, and all efforts need to be made on the part of political parties as opposed to trying to look for political point scoring on it. Every effort needs to be made to find a solution to this. So I think that as a council, can I request that we meet with the Permanent Secretary, if that can be arranged before things come to close, that can be arranged, because I think we need solutions need to be found from the Permanent Secretary, and I'm proposing that we as a council meet with her.
Chair, I propose that.
Well, happy to second that, Errol.
Okay, members, thank you. And I'm not sure if I can bring in Councillor McElduff with this system or not, but try that, TC. Just brief.
Thanks very much. The Easy Link, that type of project, and shop mobility is similar, isn't that right? Just to mention shop mobility, that if the officers could maybe engage with their local shop mobility providers to ascertain copies of the letter that they have received similarly. And just on the rural transport, earlier today, we hosted the Now group based here in Enniskillen, and there's one lady from Derrygonley, and she said that it's absolutely vital for her to get into Enniskillen every week to participate in Now group activities, and she said she's furious at the possible loss of this. So vulnerable, marginalised people could lose out or will lose out if this pertains. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, well, I think a lot has been said. This was very concerning when it was first came out, released by the BBC. I think as a council, we have to certainly get behind the residents in Fermanagh and Omagh and do whatever we can to counter this. And certainly a meeting with the Permanent Secretary of DFI is a must. Councillor Michael Duff mentioned shop mobility. Obviously, shop mobility in Enniskillen here, I'm quite involved with it as the council representative. Maybe it should be a conflict of interest, but I don't think so. But certainly we need to everybody, and I think it obviously is going to have cross-party support on this, as a bit like our safer acute services as well. It's something that's very important to both the vulnerable, the elderly, and disabled people out there. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Swift.
And I support all the councillors and Earl's proposal, absolutely. And I just want to, in absolute terms, reject any terminations or cuts to this vital service. And again, rural service. And it's appalling and abysmal that it's even suggested or threatened at this stage, already leaving vulnerable people in a very anxious state. So I'm quite outraged that once again here, the rural people and the rural services are being threatened, as the order of the day seems to be budgets. And I was contacted by a rural dweller today from the Belcoo area, who is very anxious and says, I'll just read it out, I don't drive and depend on it a lot, the rural service. I go to medical appointments and shopping. I hope we don't lose it. So that's enough in definitive terms. And there was another young girl who contacted as well, and she works with the learning disability people in the town of Enniskillen, and she's very concerned that any threat to this service will then mean that the other services, it'll have a knock-on effect. And I think the outline in the letter that we have received as well addresses other issues very clearly for us, and I support as well everything that they're saying. Again, not having a full continuance of funding to make their plans, it's not good enough either. So that will be very useful to have the meeting with the Permanent Secretary and all of that. Gurmagat.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I want to agree with everything that's been said so far, and just to add to it that it's actually quite shocking and disgraceful that we actually heard about this through the BBC. You know, that nobody was contacted beforehand. And for Fermanagh Community Transport, in the information that the letter that they sent us, have informed us that 95% of its users have some type of disability. The cost of living crisis that we're all in now, this affordable transport for people in rural areas is just so vital. And are the departments aware, as it was suggested in one of the letters that we received, that of the impacts that taking away these services will have to the individuals dependent on them, their families, their communities, as well as job losses, etc. And also Barry mentioned about a lady coming in from Derrygonnelly to go to a particular group or a club or whatever. That will impact on those community groups as well, because their numbers will go down, so they'll lose their funding. So, I mean, it's just an absolute disgrace, and totally object to it, and can't wait to meet the Secretary of State like Bernice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Withers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this potential cut of fund for the rural daily lift service deeply concerning, like others have said. It's a service as a lifeline to many rural dwellers, including Mid-Tyrone, people who require for daily activities, whether it's accessing training and employment opportunities, attending medical appointments. The reality is, without this service, people will not be able to avail of any alternative, and its removal would have a major detrimental impact on some of the most vulnerable in society. It's another example as well of the budgetary pressures that we know the departments of Stormont are facing as a result of the Tory government in London, and not having an executive in place doesn't help matters either. So we could have parties such as my own being able to prioritise vital community services like this, and I hope that's a wake-up call for other parties who are preventing an executive from being formed at this time. I would also support strong representation being sent from the Council to the Department and the Secretary of State in support of this funding being restored and secured for the long term. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Barton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, I've been contacted by a number of constituents within Mid-Tyrone. This is, as you know, Mid-Tyrone's a rural area where many people are totally reliant on this service. The removal of this service or the proposed removal of this service is very concerning. And it certainly would have a detrimental effect on the people of the area who are so dependent on this transport. Many people in this area live alone, and they like to get out occasionally, and they would suffer from the effects of loneliness and mental health issues if they didn't get out. So I think this service is much needed. It's something that we've got to fight to retain. And I actually support the proposal to meet with the Permanent Secretary.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. Just to update, this issue was raised by my colleague Mark Glasgow at the NILGA meeting on Friday, and it was unanimously agreed that Chief Executive NILGA would write to the department expressing opposition to the proposal and concern accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as everybody else has concluded, this is very detrimental to the elderly or the disabled within the rural community. I was contacted by a constituent the other day, and basically this is his day for weekly shop. So, I mean, like, he's a man in his 80s, and as I saying, to lose this here is detrimental to him. But also you have to realise, like, we've just come through a pandemic where people have been stuck in their houses basically for almost over a year, and mentally it didn't help them. And if this is to close down, we'll go back to square one again, you know. So, I mean, like, to come out of the COVID pandemic, it was all about getting out again and meeting people, and this year's been a slap in the face to them now. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's encouraging to hear the unanimous support for this, and indeed I was one of the councillors that was contacted by a number of workers, both from EasyLink Rural Transport and Fermanagh Rural Transport over the past number of weeks in relation to this. Obviously, the fact that this disproportionately disadvantage this area being the most rural district in the north is something that is a serious concern, as members have stated. Really, we have to see what we can do, and I think in light of maybe recent announcements by the government in Westminster of £500 million being given to France to try and stop people who are fleeing war and persecution in other countries, might be better spent on funding something like this. And indeed, the billions of pounds that are donated annually to nuclear armaments might be better spent on funding something like this. Now, I know we've maybe written something similar previously, but I think in this particular topic, maybe it's worth that we actually extend a letter to the Treasury to say, what can they do to help, as previous speakers have said, and as the reports and the letters and emails have identified, something that is going to directly impact the most vulnerable in our society. We need to take a stand on this. We need to take a very strong stand. So we need to see, like everything else is coming down to fund, but that fund, the money is there. It's the prioritisation of that spend that really the problem is. And unfortunately, we've seen it before that, as Councillor O'Coffey said earlier, this tactic of divide and conquer is one that's worked historically, and it's one that's been implemented again. We could find 101 better uses of this money, maybe if it was brought down to council level, that we were able to budget for some of these things ourselves. But unfortunately, the powers that be in Westminster, and unfortunately sometimes in Belfast, don't seem to have the same priorities that the people in Tyrone and Fermanagh do. And that seems to be the source of quite a number of issues. So I just maybe make that as an additional proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's right that we are devoting considerable time to this agenda item, Chair, because it is of vital importance. Funding for community transport and organisations like Shop Mobility really should take priority. As other members have said, it is a vital service for some of those people who are disabled and vulnerable people in our community. It has been highlighted to me and also referenced in the papers, Chair, about attendance at hospital appointments. And I know of one case where a lady was quoted £60 each way for a taxi to take her to Altnagelvin to a medical appointment. That's £120, Chair, completely unaffordable for most people, let alone pensioners and vulnerable people. We simply cannot allow funding for this vital service to be removed. So it's absolutely essential that we lobby hard for prioritisation of funding for this service. In relation to Shop Mobility, I'm one of the councillors who has been lobbied by Hazel McGuigan, Chair of Shop Mobility OMA, and Hazel in her communication highlights some amazing statistics, Chair, that in the 8-month period between April 22 and December 22, Shop Mobility OMA has hired out 2,228 wheelchairs and mobility scooters. And that is, you know, over 2,000 individuals who have required that service in an 8-month period. It's inconceivable that that service would be jeopardised. Hazel referenced that their current level of funding is not sufficient to meet increasing energy costs. And I think that the whole funding package for organisations like Shop Mobility needs to be reviewed and increased in accordance with cost of living increases. So I really want to support the proposal by Councillor Thompson, and also to second Councillor McAleer's proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Glenn Campbell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep my comments brief, and I too want to sort of welcome the unanimous support on this issue. Like other councillors, I've been contacted by concerned people in West Tyrone, and one lady in particular impressed on me just how much this service is a lifeline. She cited things that have been cited before here tonight, like hospital appointments and shopping and even haircuts and things. And indeed, it was very apparent that she was very anxious, and also that it was an access to social connection that she could not live without. She didn't drive, and she cited sort of people she shared journeys with, to hairdressers and things, and she knew people by their first name. I might have knew their second name, but she knew them by their first name, and she knew where they went and how they used the service. It was really impressed on me just how important this service is to people living in rural isolation. And as the previous councillor said, coming out of the pandemic, the last thing people need is this anxiety hanging over them. So I hope it can be resolved as quickly as possible and the funding secured. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Gallen.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, this is a very, very concerning issue, in particular given our rurality in Fermanagh and Omagh. And this is both of these are vital services, whether it be Fermanagh Community Transport and EasyLink or Shop Mobility. And it's good to see all parties here united on what they're saying on this, and no doubt we all agree this should be retained. All these services should be retained and fully funded. I am glad that we've called for this meeting to express our constituents' concerns. I too was contacted by many people who are going to be affected by this in the past couple of days. But noting that proposal and the comments from Councillor Thompson, you know, it would be better than meeting with Permanent Secretary. It would be ministers in place and an executive up and running. And given the comments and given how every party here is supporting us, if people were in doing their jobs in the Assembly, this wouldn't even be an issue, Chair. I would be fairly confident this wouldn't be an issue given the comments here tonight. And this is just another example of how no Assembly and no executive is hurting the most vulnerable people here in our society. They should be back at work. And just to conclude, Chair, I do think some parties need to take a good, long, hard look at themselves for playing a part in causing this pain. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Coffey is next.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah. I just obviously I share the frankly outrage of the councillors at this threat to what is undoubtedly a lifeline to our most vulnerable people. As has been stated, it provides access to basic health care services, as a social outlet, and even access to shopping and the like. And then it addresses the issues of rural isolation. So it's an anti-rural threat. And it has to be said that any move to withdraw funding from these services would be inhumane and cruel. Of course, that doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's certainly almost unbelievable that this would proceed. It seems that this threat, if you read the documentation clearly, is that the department has raised the fact that it has no clarity over whether it will have enough money to sustain the service, and then that was either leaked or released to the BBC in some way. So I think we have to say that either there is serious consideration as to the removal of funding for these vital services which provide a lifeline to the most vulnerable people in our society, which it would be an absolute disgrace and must be opposed. And we cannot, ignore it as a possibility or a likelihood. Or there is the possibility that DFI has selectively released this threat to try and leverage the Department for Finance. It isn't unusual that these things happen, of course, because they feel that they need to increase their share of the budget. And if that's the case, that's also a disgrace, because they're causing huge concern among the community. And the thing you do notice is that while this does happen, it's not unknown for different departments to release these sort of threats and then get extra money, and then suddenly they put them away again. Eventually, these threats turn out to be true, so that would be a concern. But the point does come down, obviously, if we had ministers in place, and I'm not pointing any elbows or fingers at people here, that this would potentially be something that they could resolve. But it has to be said that we did have threats against basic services when there were ministers in place because of budgetary cuts. And the point does come down then to what has been raised by Councillor McAleer, that the overall quantum of funding is completely insufficient. There's a £1 billion shortfall, according to the Tories overlords who are now ruling Northern Ireland. And frankly, I think we need to be speaking, certainly to, making protests in the direction of Westminster government, but equally, and I'll second that proposal from Councillor McAleer if it needs it, but equally, I think we do need to write to the Minister, the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Finance, because obviously this is a question of inadequate funding for infrastructure, and that's the excuse. If you read the correspondence from the Permanent Secretary, he's saying he doesn't have enough, or she's saying she doesn't have enough funding, then this is raising this threat. Now, we have to make sure that this doesn't come through, of course, but we need, as a council, and I'm glad to hear all councillors opposed to this, we need to send out a strong signal. This is not acceptable any more than cuts to our basic healthcare system is. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. And just really, I fully support the comments by other councillors. I think really the powers that be that make these decisions, the Department for Infrastructure, that the department should really consider the words of Jason Donaghy that 95% of our members have a physical or psychological disability. This goes further than just transport. This reaches out into people's psychological well-being. My worry would be that there'd be an awful lot more health issues in our elderly and vulnerable population who do not get out to meet other people, who do not get out for their hospital appointments, their shopping. And in the extensive Peace Plus consultation recently, 22 key issues were identified, and the number one key issue in our district in Fermanagh and Omagh was rural transport. And I think that has to be underlined. This is a very grave situation, and I think we all have to really fight against this to support our community transport. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you, members. We'll try and move this on. Just Councillor Garrity.
Yes, and very brief, Chair. I wasn't going to come in, but support the sentiment of everyone's contribution to this. But I just thought it would be remiss of me not to mention, in my local community anyway, and parts of West Tyrone, there's a great voluntary aspect. And the people that do this work won't be listening tonight or aren't on, but there are many people that are well on in their own years, and they do help vulnerable people to their appointments, to their doctors, to hairdressers, and to maybe to chapel or to service. And that's not the way forward because it's too big of an issue. But I just thought when we are touching on this, it'd be remiss of me not to publicly thank them for the good work that they're doing in the community. That's alleviating some of the pressure on people, but still it's not the answer. The answer is what the previous members have said, that there's more funding to this and this services is retained. But I just want to say on my own behalf, thanks to the people who offer their services to people that need it in my area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I will just gather the proposals. I think we could take it, members, that Councillor Thompson and Councillor Blake were happy to propose in second to note the 5 pieces of correspondence and then also propose a meeting with the Permanent Secretary. We could also maybe include, there was proposals or comments of letters to be written to the Secretary of State, the Department, the Secretary or the Permanent Secretary of Finance and DFI. Kim, is that correct? And that could be incorporated as well if those members are happy. And then there was a proposal by Councillor McAleer, seconded by Councillor Deehan, that would go and write to the Treasury as well. Is that all? Members agreed? Thank
Agreed,
you.
Chair.
Okay.
Agreed,
The next
yeah.
item is 8.8, members, is to consider correspondence dated 8th of March from Department for Communities regarding the energy bill support payment. You've seen this piece of correspondence, members. They're saying that there's not a helpline in place as was requested. Can we have a proposer to note? Councillor Paul Robinson, seconder. Councillor Stevenson, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, whilst I will note it, I suppose the letter that we had sent requested that the DFC actually liaise with the now defunct Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So maybe it would be worth our while trying to follow up with the relevant department, whichever of the three that it is now. I'm presuming it's business and trade, but it could be energy security and net zero, or science, innovation and technology, which have succeeded that the former department. But I do think, just in terms of trying to get an answer, it might be an idea to follow on directly with the department that is dealing with this. So maybe if I could make that as a proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Opposed. Is there a seconder for Councillor McAleer's proposal? Councillor O'Coffey.
Second that, Chair.
Okay, your members agreed. All right, thank you. Any other correspondence? I think that's it, isn't it? Okay. We'll just move, members, to confidential and do the minutes now, if that's okay. If we could have a proposer, Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Robinson to second. Okay, thank you, Donald. I will just ask Kim McLaughlin to sum up the committee business.
So during confidential business, Chair, members considered matters arising from the confidential minutes of 14th of February 2023, and there were no matters arising.
Okay, proposer to note, please. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Warrington, thank you. There's a few items of AOB, members, that I think we could deal with if members are happy to continue. Just Councillor McLaughlin was the first. Are you on AOB, Councillor Green, or something else? Okay, Councillor McLaughlin was the first, so go ahead, John.
Do you need to propose?
Sorry, Chair, just coming out of confidential business is procedurally.
I think we did get a proposer, did we? Yes, I think we did, Councillor McAleer. Yep, thank you. I think we're out, so now we might have to extend, but go ahead anyway now, John.
Do you want to extend before I start? Or
sorry.
Well, I'll propose to extend, as soon as I'm getting in.
Please, Councillor Stevenson.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me raise this topic. I've been approached in the last week at different events, some by some veterans and others by family members. They're raising concerns that the MOD is building a Royal Irish Regiment Museum in Belfast, and they believe that to facilitate this museum, they're going to asset strip the Regimental Museum of the Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers, which is contained within our castle. I did speak to Director John Boyle, and he said he would hopefully have some information for me tonight on this. But this is very worrying for these people. This is part of our heritage, whether you love the skins or not. There's lots of people within this chamber who have family connections, whether they're happy about it or not, have family connections with a regiment which was furnished by this county for over 300 years, and the history is contained in our castle, and it's part of our heritage, and we would hate to lose any of it.
Yeah, Chair, there are changes in relation to the museum. As you can imagine, the MOD holds the budget, and they provide funding to the Irish or the Royal Irish Regiment Charity. And then there is the Enniskillen's Museum trustees who look after all of the artifacts or whatever in the museum. At this time, the collection of the Enniskillen's as trustees remains, and the ownership of it remains with the trustees themselves as part of the Enniskillen's. But there are plans to have one museum on 2 sites, one in Belfast and one here in Enniskillen. Now, whether the artifacts move between Enniskillen and Belfast have yet to be decided, but certainly at this point in time, the trustees effectively have the power to decide. They could put in some sort of notice into those arrangements that those artifacts remain in Enniskillen. And there is a new branding which is all part of the museum. It's the branding is Untold, the stories of the Irish in the British Army. And it's going to be very central to both Belfast and Enniskillen Museum. So I suppose in answer to your query as to whether the artifacts are going to be lost to Belfast, that has not been established at this time. And I think further discussions need to take place along with the Royal Irish Regiment Charity and the trustees of the Enniskillen's museums here themselves.
Okay, have you a proposal, John, out of that?
Yeah, thank you, John, Director John Boyle, for bringing that information back to me. On the back of that there, then I'm going to make a proposal that we write to the trustees to ensure that they keep the property there, and that they also, if they're intending to do anything substantial, that they could maybe discuss it with councillors with the council itself, maybe a meeting with us if they're going to make massive changes, because obviously it's going to affect a lot of people from this district.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that, Chair. I mean, that museum, the artifacts go back to Napoleonic times. It's just an incredible museum. And I really think it's something that I would resist moving out of the district. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to support Councillor McCloughy in his comments and in his proposal. I suppose as a military veteran myself, I have great empathy with what he's saying there, and we certainly don't want to be losing any of that out of our district. So happy to support his proposal, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Bale.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to completely support the proposal by my colleague there. As someone who loves history and is aware of what's going on in Enniskillen Castle, I think it would be a travesty to lose this from our district. And you know, we have a great history scene here in Fermanagh and Omagh, and that should be encouraged instead of removed. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, I just want to add my voice. I think it's shameful. It's potentially a wanton act of destruction of our heritage here. It's a collective heritage. You don't have to agree with any particular military engagement or whatever, but this is something that is part and parcel of our heritage, and it's a shared heritage, as has been stated by Councillor McCloughy. And I don't think that that we should be showed over in this manner. It's quite important we retain this in the area where it's context and where it's relevant to the history of Enniskillen in particular. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's agreed on my members. I think. All right. I had Councillor McElduff and Councillor Green as well. I think Councillor McElduff, yours are. Yes, very brief. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just Tricia Nugent is well known to many councillors, particularly the Mid-Tyrone ones. But the Mid-Ulster Drama Festival, like the Enniskillen Drama Festival, is very important to the council area. I was fortunate to attend one of the Enniskillen Drama Nights. It was on the Thursday, A Delicate Balance, great play. And it's one of them that's on show again at the Mid-Ulster Drama Festival. So in terms of being invited along as chair of the council, Patricia did ask me specifically at this meeting to extend an invite to any interested councillor. And possibly the best way of doing that might be to contact Democratic Services, and then your interest would be forwarded if you wish to attend any of the 9 nights from the 24th of March till the 1st of April. You know, that's just a courtesy that the director of the festival asked me to forward. And then secondly, maybe ask John if our community support officers could engage with our special athletes, the clubs, because some will be going to World Games in Berlin, you know, including OMA Aspires, Starbreakers, other groups. But I've been contacted by a lady whose daughter is a member of OMA Aspires and is wondering about available help. So if we could maybe look into that, you know, what type of help can the council give our special athletes, local clubs who will be participating in World Games in Berlin? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're just really looking at proposer and seconder for these members. So Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, happy to second that proposal, Chair. I just wanted to raise an issue. I actually saw the delicate balance myself in Kilty Clogher not that long ago. It is a fine play, and I see that's also on the agenda there. But one thing is, I did notice, I think on the Fermanagh and Omagh website, last year we did provide details of this festival, but I do not believe it's currently on for this year's festival, for the Carrickmore Drama Festival. So if that could be looked into, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, again, very happy to support. I know it's a show and a festival that has a great tradition, not just within my own DEA, but beyond that. I suppose Councillor kind enough to come in and correct me on a thing earlier, but there was an email circulated around lunchtime on Monday, I think, from Patricia extending an invite to councillors. So maybe if you check your inbox or your junk mail, perhaps you might find that very request. So I'm looking forward to that again this year. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Catherine Kelly.
Yeah, Chair, thanks to let me in just for a moment, just to back up to support Barry's comments on the Special Olympics. In Carrickmore, we have Starbreakers group, and we have 2 athletes in Carrickmore Starbreakers that are going to the World Games this summer. So I'd just like to support Barry's comments and see if we can get some support from the council for those athletes. And Councillor McAleer is correct. The email did come out. So I would encourage all councillors to come visit our lovely town of Carrickmore for the wonderful drama festival that Patricia and her group put on every year in Carrickmore. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think we're all agreed on them. Thank you. John, you'll liaise with the second part of that, with the special groups, yeah.
Yeah, Chair, yeah, we have a mechanism through Significant Important Achievements Awards, and we'll look at the applicability of that for the group.
Okay, and Councillor Green contacted my members on the item of missed bin collections, and he was a bit late in tonight. I think he was maybe gathering up a few bins, bringing them in the trailer, Seamus. But now this is far from this committee, Seamus, we have to warn you, so maybe just a proposal if you have one, if that's all right. And well, okay, Seamus?
Yeah, it's... I know, I realise it's the wrong committee to do this, but I believe it's such an important issue that we need to raise it now before we have to wait for another, I don't know, how long before it can be raised. I have had so many people contact me in the last week about bin collections that hasn't been, especially the food bin, hasn't been lifted for weeks and months at a time, and it's particularly affecting people in rural areas, because the people in rural areas has only the small caddy bins, which just about do the 2-week cycle. And so I am looking for a report from the council on exactly what is the problem, exactly when is it going to be resolved, and why is it once again that rural people who, in my opinion, and I've repeated it here many a time, has already been discriminated against by only having the small caddy bins, while people in the urban areas receive the large brown wheelie bin. way that they seem to be affected largely on this bin collection or not, no bin collection as in food waste. And the fact that we're trying to recycle and we're forever on about recycling, and now we're being told throw the food into the waste bin, you know, if you've nowhere else to put it. It's scandalous. It's the one thing people out there say, what does the council do? Only lift your bin. And now we're not even fulfilling that service. So I think something needs to be done, and it needs to be done ASAP, because people out there it's a really bad look for this council and needs to be got sorted.
Okay, thanks for that proposal. And Councillor Feely.
Yeah, I just agree with everything Seamus says, and I just second the proposal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, members, that can be forwarded to the directors here. We'll take that on board and forward that on to Director News. Is that correct? Okay. Members, there's 5 or 6 speakers there, but really this is not the committee. I'm inclined not to let anyone else in on it. The proposal's been made and seconded. So we're going to just move to close the meeting. Can I thank Kim and John for all their help? This is my last meeting. I think there's one maybe at the end of the month on the Lakeland Forum, but it's been a joy to chair this committee, and thanks to the 2 directors and the staff and the councillors as well for all your help and support. So good night and a safe home.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Well done.
Night, Mark. Bye.
Good night.